Hell no.
What are they doing now? Or are they going to put it down? Yeah.
Hey man, hey, come here. Get back over here. Yeah. And videotape. Hey, get him. Back up. Back up.
Your master tell you to back up now?
Huh?
The master tell you to tell me that?
You know what?
Did your master
You know
tell
the
you?
baddest concern about you get hit with one of these rounds that goes up in that car.
Okay, thank you, master.
All right?
Damn, kid. You're getting my shot. Yeah. I know, man. I got 24,000 people. I'm amazing. So good, man. So odd, man. Love you down here.
He don't want to wear that hurt me.
Hey! That's cool.
Stop us, dude. Shit.
I can't go in, but I gotta say it.
Really don't see an ending in sight just yet.
Thank you, Ashley. You know, there are a lot of tools that police have really
fuck off. What was she saying?
She was just mad I was taking pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Part of the protest that was going on and the destruction of property there. It's important that the
Let's go! Let's go! What's that?
Yeah!
Fuck ass police!
In the barns, he's pinned the barns rather of protesters. Get very busy tonight, so
Right.
protesters who may be taking there's just no way to tell where this is going to go from one half hour to the next.
His Bearcat protesting standing in front of his signs there, Black Lives Matters. Headline, but of course, I think everybody understands that this will probably dominate the headlines. This protest went from something peaceful, sort of a celebration of our First Amendment rights as American citizens to gather, assemble, and protest peacefully, to all of a sudden the city of Atlanta, no doubt, did not want to see. Certainly, these are images that Atlantans don't want to see broadcast around the world, and yet they are. You may be wondering about the mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms. We've been told that Mayor Bottoms is planning on holding a press conference at some point from police headquarters. We haven't gotten any specific information, or at least I haven't gotten any specific information
Rick?
on when that might take place. Yeah, Trace.
Right. I just wanted to, sorry to interrupt you, but as we look at this image here, we see some buses in the background. there. They could be being brought in to possibly, as they detain folks, they have a place to put them, since we're talking about a large amount of people who could be detained during this protest. It looks as though Atlanta police officers and state police could be preparing for that. We see a lot of those flashing lights there. So just wanted to point that out, that things continue to progress here, continue to change.
I wouldn't be surprised, Tracy, if that's exactly what those buses are there for. And I also mentioned, and I know this because I used to work in the building, that there is a precinct, there is a police precinct in the basement of CNN. It's right there. And so, you know, as people sort of mill about and go and use the food court there, you can always see a police presence. And so I would not be surprised if perhaps some people who were arrested have been brought in and are being held at one of the cells that's right there in that location, almost just feet away from the scene. And there's another line of the police just standing there, you know, ready in case they need to move, Tracy, but again, showing restraint and just trying to hold that line.
Yeah, and I know at this hour we are preparing to hear from Police Chief Erica Shields. We've had an amazing and Haley, again, things have calmed down around you. Tell us what you're seeing from where you are.
Because it was parked directly next to those APD cars that are now shattered and one on fire. We were just feet away from that, unscathed amongst an angry group of protesters who were also angry at us, and that's why we weren't on air for the last 20 minutes. We were moving to safety. We are a block away from the scene. We're continuing to move forward. Police have this roadway blocked right off the Centennial Olympic Park. Asking people to move onto the sidewalks. They've asked me to stay on the sidewalk. And so this, as I said earlier, it ebbs and flows sometimes, and you have people who will agitate and try to make things a little more difficult.
Shit don't matter.
Different levels of action here tonight. But right now, our biggest concern is safety. We are again seeing the sun begin to set as different plumes of smoke that came from a burning police vehicle right now. And so a number of people out here have come later, it appears. A lot of people may not have been. They're coming with different energy. Capture all of that for you from the safe distance. You still see the no justice, no peace signs. You still see the people protesting in front of police right now. But again, you can't take for granted moments of quiet as if this is ending, because as you see things pick up and escalate very quickly. But again, thank you again for noting that the safety comes first, especially for our crews out here in the field, as we're operating in a very fluid situation and trying to bring you this coverage and show you this fallout right now, and the police right now who are in a mode of restraint, trying not to let things escalate by physical aggression. But at some point we have seen that their presence has had to calm things down, and that has been needed at times. And so the sun is beginning to set. We don't know when this will end, but again, we are trying to stay safe as possible to bring you this coverage as it gets darker here tonight in Atlanta. I will note that the shut down around Marietta Park, around where this protest is now concentrated. I want to note, though, that this took a turn. This has only made it to one stop so far. We started at the Capitol earlier today. The protest was supposed to go to the CNN Center and then go to the police headquarters. And I'm not sure who made it to police headquarters, but right now, a lot of the action stopped in front of the CNN Center. whatever reason. I know one reason was that there was a barricade that they could get past the CNN Center onto State Arena, so they congregated there in that circle, and that's where we saw a lot of the action and some people just acting out because they could. But take a look here. People are moving and lining up in front of officers here. And it looks like it could be a long night. Back to you guys in the studio.
Haley, it very well could be, and it's interesting to note that pretty much the protest kind of stopped right there in front of the CNN Center. We had been following along with Brittany Miller from Centennial Olympic Park, and in goal, we thought was going to be Atlanta Police Headquarters. The protesters never ended up there, but ended up clashing somewhat when the police there in front of the CNN Center. As we get to the 9 o'clock hour, because it does look like things have not calmed down fully just yet. I do want to bring you back to how this all started this afternoon. Obviously, developments in Minneapolis this week with the death of George Floyd. That happened on Memorial Day. And then today, it was breaking news this afternoon that the police officer that was seen with his knee on George Floyd's neck was under arrest. He was arrested today. A total of 4 officers from the Minneapolis Police Department were fired. Many are still awaiting the arrest of the other 3 officers. But again, one of the main officers that we saw in that video there with his knee on George Floyd's neck, Derek Chauvin, was arrested today. And this is just one of many protests, one we're having here in Atlanta, one of many that are happening across the country. I've seen on social media protests ignited in cities including New York and also in Washington, D.C., and a number of people protesting in the city of Dallas as well across Texas. So across the country, so many are frustrated, they're angry, they want to be heard, and finding that there's no other way to do it other than a protest. In many cases, the protests have been peaceful. This one started out peaceful for the most part. Only damage to property to police vehicles to the CNN Center. The CNN Center was demolished. Glass was broken. Windows were broken at the CNN Center. The police car was set on fire. So there have been sparks, unfortunately, of property that's been damaged in all of this. But for the most part, Atlanta police have shown amazing restraint. They've been out in the last half an hour in riot gear, pushing that crowd back away from the CNN Center. The car that was on fire there. In the midst of that crowd, we have a number of reporters who've been doing a tremendous job. Really, in light of what's going on there, they have been able to stay safe, not get injured, and cover the story at the same time. One of those reporters is our own Ashley Thompson. Ashley, we're seeing officers lined up. Do we know where they're trying to move protesters to, or just more or less contain them at this point?
And Tracy, I actually just asked a police officer that. I said, what's the goal here? Where are you trying to move these demonstrators? And he told me, you know, at this point, we're really just trying to maintain order. So that's where they are right now. We can see Atlanta police officers out here. We can see the SWAT team. And I know we told you about the CNN damage, but take a look at this. McCormick and Schmick, demonstrators slamming things through these windows right here as well. So the CNN Center is not the only building that's been damaged so far. Totally smashed these windows. You can see inside of the restaurant, there's a ton of glass in there right now. We are being kept at a distance. We're being kept further back from the protesters. These SWAT team members are not letting us pass by. See if we're able to go this way and get a little bit closer to the crowd. Right now, it seems to be a little more peaceful than it was just 20 minutes ago. People are just standing out here, people kind of taking it in, but they're not dispersing. They're kind of just stuck here. They're kind of just, you know, standing here and witnessing what is going on today. We know this protest has been going on for hours, really. I mean, we've been on air since 4 o'clock. These demonstrators have been out here, and it has turned wild, as you mentioned, Tracy, at times, but for the most part, it has been peaceful. Now, there are concerns about what will happen when the sun goes down, as it is right now. What will happen after dark? We've seen those images coming out of Minneapolis and other cities of buildings on fire and buildings totally defaced and damaged. And I know police officers are hoping that does not happen here. Look at this, a very powerful image. These protesters face to face with these police officers here. Officers really just trying to maintain order at this point as the sun goes down. We're continuing to see what's going on out here on the ground. More may happen. As I mentioned, the night is young, so we're going to continue to keep an eye on things. Oh, let's take a look over here at the CNN Center. We've got some demonstrators breaking the glass of the CNN Center over here as well. We are in front of McCormick and Schmidt restaurant. They're posing with the glass. They're breaking the glass with sticks, with metal rods. This is getting out of control. This is still, we've got a long way ahead of us. This is what some demonstrators are doing. We really want to reiterate and stress that the majority of these demonstrators who have been out here tonight have been peaceful. They've really just been marching, they've been holding signs, they want to get their point across. But as it gets darker, as it gets later, this is now what we are looking at. Just take a look.
They're totally sitting it down.
And what's remarkable is that Atlanta police officers really are not trying to arrest a bunch of people. I mean, we've seen dozens of people out here destroying property. They are not getting arrested just yet. We have seen a few arrests, as we've showed you live on air, but really for the most part, a lot of these troublemakers are not getting arrested. Take a look at this guy just insisting on breaking the glass right here. And there are concerns that this will go on into the night. We're going to send it back over to you in the studio, maybe get at a safer distance.
Ashley, do that. Make sure you're in a place that is safe. Of course, there's a lot of glass that's flying in that area, and that is of concern. Yeah, it is quite remarkable that people are able to vandalize property like that, private property, and police are standing back right now. We've heard Police Chief Erica Shields, who was out amongst a lot of the protesters earlier this evening. She basically said she did not want this to become an arrest fest and arrest everyone out there, respecting everyone's right to peacefully protest. So it is interesting to watch all this unfold throughout the evening and watch police more or less stand by and allow the protesters an opportunity to vent some frustration, obviously within limits. When we saw the police car set on fire there, that's when officers moved that crowd back. Officers in riot gear moved the crowd back at a safer distance and allowed firefighters to put out that fire. So again, as we continue to watch this protest in downtown Atlanta, we are entering now almost our 5th hour of this. It's been going on. A lot of people started gathering around 2 or 3 this afternoon in Centennial Olympic Park. And the crowd continued to swell after that, really at its climax around 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon. Now, as night falls, actually mentioned what will happen now. We are awaiting a press conference from Police Chief Erica Shields to find out what the process will be at that point. We have seen a number of police officers obviously prepared. They are in face shields, a riot gear with their batons, and a number of armored vehicles that are out in that area. You can actually see those on the right side of your screen there. A vast amount of protesters, and really kind of a line of demarcation of where the protesters are and where the police are holding that line right in front of those armored vehicles. And we see it looks as though that is a police bus there, possibly brought in to bring in some, some of the protesters who will be taken into custody if and when they choose to do that. I know a number of officers are equipped right now with zip ties, which is usually what they have during a lot of these protests to detain people who have gotten unruly. All right, we do want to bring in my colleague Sean Gables. She is joining us now because, Sean, this is a story that's been unfolding throughout the evening and something that at times is disheartening to see property damaged, at other times heartwarming when you see the number of people who come out and who are peacefully protesting and really wanting an opportunity to be heard and asking for change.
Tracy, we saw earlier coverage today Yep.
Brittany Miller was on location.
Yeah, man.
She had initially met with organizers, and their top concern was to, number one, have a peaceful protest. And the message that they wanted to get across as they marched into Atlanta and was hoping to get eventually to the state capitol was to just talk about the inequality and justice. Somehow, at some point, this has turned out of control. It is a dark day for Atlanta. This is a dark day for our nation. We have seen similar protests, not just here in Atlanta, but also in Minneapolis, New York City, Denver, Ohio. We're going to go now to our reporter who is on the scene, Haley Mason. You've been out there right in the middle of the trenches. I saw the video that Ashley Thompson was just showing us momentarily where protesters were continuing to knock out the glass outside the CNN's headquarters there. This is troubling. Police are not even attempting to arrest those people.
It seems like this is a part of their de-escalation methods right now. Sean, I'll tell you, we are right at Marietta Boulevard in Centennial, where police are met with a line of protesters who are questioning, saying, when will this stop? But I do want to take your attention across the street because we still hear the glass breaking at McCormick and Smick's seafood restaurant. You see two different types of protesters, some who are focused on fixing injustice, fixing systematic problems, and others who are using this as an opportunity to get away with vandalism. And that's what we have here, two different intentions at play, with police in the middle and the rest of us trying to document it as safely as possible for you. We'll just bring you another pan over again to police here. If Eric, if you can walk forward a little bit, you can see that to some degree there's dialogue here between protesters and police. And again, it's just fascinating to say that just yards behind them, a police car was burned through the ground, and now people are running. We're going to move out of the way. We don't know what they're running for or what they're running about. We've seen types of things happen where people just break out in a silent run. I don't know what they may have seen or what may have happened. Earlier in the day, things were being thrown. We don't know what that was about, but we do know that it continues to happen. We hope that things do not take a violent turn. We hope that this is a protest, and all in response to a rejection of authority and using power for a lot of
Get it spinning again.
are expressing tonight is in these days and abuse of power. You see some of that expressed in different ways here. John.
Thank you, Haley. We do know that Governor Trump earlier sent a tweet, posted it, actually saying that it's your right to peacefully protest. He was concerned about this happening amidst COVID-19 and was encouraging many of the protesters to please. As he had given out his executive order yesterday, he had asked that all Georgians wear face masks when they're in public. Just from looking at the left of your screen, you see a handful are in masks and the majority of them are not. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, she has been seriously concerned about ensuring that she wanted Atlanta to have the right to protest, and she is sympathetic to the fight for George Floyd, who lost his life. It is a narrative that we have seen, especially communities of color, over and over again, where there is a miscarriage of justice. We currently have the case happening now in Brunswick with Ahmaud Arbery, and this has really, as what has festered the push for many of these protesters. It appears that something is going on. They're chanting in the middle. Let's go to Brittany Miller. Brittany, I'm not sure if there is something happening. Is someone coming out to talk to them? It seems like they've been revved up again.
Okay, so we are here. We are still at the intersection of Centennial Olympic Park and Marietta Street. What we see, we sort of have a behind-the-scenes look, if you will, at what officers are doing in front of these protesters, and they have been getting ready. I want to go ahead and show you. They were sort of behind here putting on gas masks and walking towards these protesters, And we heard one officer say, this is your final warning to disperse. As you can see, none of the protesters moved, but we have seen them, again, putting on those shields, putting on those helmets and getting those batons, and even putting on gas masks. So we're not sure what could happen next. We're going to walk a little bit closer while staying at a safe distance just to see what will unfold. It looks like this has sort of come to what I'm going to call a standstill with officers creating that barricade that I've been talking about all day and protesters not letting up. It looks like protesters are getting a little bit closer to those officers as they continue to stand together in this sort of line, not letting protesters pass through. We've seen a lot of officers just walking back to these SWAT trucks to get gear, to exchange new gear. You can see those zip ties on the side of their vests and even on the side by their pockets, ready to arrest anybody who they feel needs to be detained. And speaking of that, if you look to my left, we are right in front of the City of Atlanta Corrections bus, and you can see people that have been arrested today sitting in these chairs with their hands behind their backs. If I go ahead and count the number of people, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 people. 4 people, one person holding up a sign, their hands right now, telling me 4 people are on that bus. They have been arrested, they have been detained after today's protest. We don't know if there could be more. Officers, again, lining up for whatever could happen next. We are back here where the officers are doing so and getting their gear together. And they have told me this is probably the safest place you could be, but you don't want to be here for too long. So that gives you an idea of what is to come. Again, they are giving warnings to these protesters that they need to disperse immediately. Protesters are not budging. They are here to demand the justice that they've been seeking all day long. Keep in mind, this protest started at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. The sun has set, the sun is going down, and these protesters are still out here. They have marched all across downtown Atlanta, starting at Centennial Olympic Park, making their way up past the CNN Center, walking around through Georgia State, up to the Capitol, turning around, and then coming back down here, and that is where the mayhem began. But it is not over. It is not over by any means. The signs are still high in the sky. Officers are still standing firm, and so are protesters. So, of course, we're going to continue to stay here on the ground. It just seems very quiet right now, eerily quiet compared to what we've heard all day. And when you remember the visions of that mayhem that we saw earlier, we are seeing some things flying through the sky. And I don't know if you can see, this just got my attention. This man standing on this street light, it looks like. Can you see that? Live on air, that he's on a cell phone, but he's pretty high up. I don't know if officers will try to get him down, but it looks like people are now climbing light posts and street lights. So it may get out of hand again. Of course, we're going to continue to keep you updated. Officers are running back here now. We don't know why they're running. We don't know what they're grabbing. But things could definitely change in the next few moments as we hear protesters applauding in the crowd there. But of course, I'm going to keep a close eye on what's happening here, but I'll send it back to you guys in the studio.
All right, Rich, we do want to keep a close eye on what's happening in downtown Atlanta. Some new information we've just gotten in from Atlanta Police Department. When we saw the crowd, when we saw officers push back those protesters, there was one officer, an Atlanta police officer, who sustained minor injuries. Basically, police tell us that the crowd started to surround a vehicle and an officer was inside that patrol car. Additional officers started to push protesters back from the vehicle, and that led to a number of scuffles, they say, between police and protesters, and at least 3 arrests. One officer was pushed to the ground and sustained minor injuries. They say they've used pepper spray several times during the confrontation to push the crowd back. Right now, they're, of course, as we see, using quite a bit of restraint to allow people to protest there. Officers say they've been subjected to water bottles, eggs, and other items being thrown at them, but they remain hopeful that the activity will cease and there will be no need for further arrests or clashes with protesters. But again, as we take a look at these live pictures, they did bring out at least 2 buses to possibly transport those protesters once they are arrested and detained, if need be. And Sean, as night falls, certainly the concern is heightened about what could possibly happen in the city. At this hour, we are still awaiting a press conference from Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, and no doubt more information from Atlanta Police Chief Erica Shields on where police officers will go from here in terms of maintaining peace in the city. You're taking a live look right now at the podium there at the Atlanta Police Department. And of course, we will wait to hear from both of them about what will happen in the city. In the meantime, we want to head back out to Ashley Thompson. She is down there on the ground in the trenches amidst the protesters there. Ashley, has it calmed down or have things ticked back up?
Tracy, there are like little pops of wildness, so it'll calm down and then something will happen and everybody will kind of freak out and scream. But I am going to bring in Christopher, who lives in Atlanta, but he's from Ohio, and you came to be a part of this. What do you make of what you're seeing right now?
Well, the main thing I'm looking at right now, this is going to be the poster of everything. Our people's face is going to be the poster of this. We got to remember that this is our city, and what we do represents our actions. And this right here, we got to have something to come back to. We can't come back to this. We cannot come back to this. I'm gonna let you know, 400 years of oppression. I understand our people are going through issues, but we gotta start relying on the powers of God. The Most High will lead us out of all this. We understand that America's Babylon, we get it. But all this is happening right now, you have to understand this is going to play in our actions. This is the results. This is the results.
Right, do you fear that this will be the headline? These people who are damaging the buildings are kind of overtaking the message here.
We're going too far with this. I mean, here's a mystery. The great, you got two greats in this world. You got Malcolm X. You have Malcolm X, and you have Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King walked in peace. He understood that action was to bring your power to the people within your peace. Render evil with evil will never get nowhere. When you render evil with evil, what you're going to get back? You're going to get evil back.
So when you see the CNN Center and you see these windows smashed, you see the graffiti, and you saw the police cruisers getting smashed earlier, you're not on board with that. But do you understand why people are lashing out in that way?
I understand. Our people are very frustrated. We have been. This has been an ongoing currency, and since justice is not being handled, then justice will go into anger. That anger will replay this. This is what you're seeing.
And certainly a lot of protesters are still smashing into these windows here at the CNN Center. Take a look at that up there. A huge boulder right now being thrown into the front of that restaurant. Some of these demonstrators really just, I guess, trying to get their voices heard through this way, through this expression. And they're really just damaging everything in sight. I will tell you the crowds have thinned out just a little bit, but as you mentioned, Tracy, and as we know, as night falls, the concern increases for things like this. We can see some police officers, members of the SWAT team moving in right there, and they do have their guns drawn. Take a look, they've got their guns out. They've got their guns out. So we're going to continue to watch what happens out here, but somebody just threw a glass bottle at a member of the SWAT team. Incredible restraint these officers are showing at this time, though, but we just hope this doesn't get even more dangerous and even more wild. Because the sun is going down, and it's getting later, it's getting darker outside, and we've seen those images from other cities and those other protests in Minneapolis. Will that happen tonight in Atlanta? We will be on the ground monitoring things. We're going to send it back to you guys in the studio.
We certainly hope, Ashley, that this does not happen. We have just learned from our sources at City Hall that Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms is expected to give a live press conference from Atlanta Police Headquarters. We're expecting this possibly within the next 15 minutes. Also, it is 8:58 tonight. The last time we spoke to Brittany Miller, she said that the Atlanta Police Department, who has shown great restraint to try to attempt to de-escalate this from getting any worse, they have given their final warning. Brittany, you are at a position from your vantage point where you saw those police officers putting on gas masks and preparing to possibly walk into that crowd.
Right, and I want to show you that right now. Officers actually right now, look at this to my left, they are getting their gear together for whatever is going to happen next. We are going to suspect that gas is a part of what happened next, given that they're all putting on gas masks. You can see that they are shooting up here. Let's get a close-up shot of this. They have their helmets on, they have those masks on, they're putting on gear around their waists and preparing for the next phase of trying to disperse this crowd. We were told, and I don't know if this gives you an idea of what could happen in the next few minutes, we were told to turn the air conditioning off in our car, which is parked close by, because they didn't want any fumes to get into our car. So they are setting up right now. I'll leave you on this shot and I'll send it back to you.
We're going to start our 9 o'clock newscast. For those of you who are just joining us right now, we want to tell you, Brittany was just mentioning about the tear gas that may possibly happen to those individuals who are possibly, the police department is going to spray with tear gas to try to disperse this crowd, to get them to leave the area. We are following this breaking news. If you're just joining us right now, I'm Sean Gables along with Rick Fulbaum. This has been a terrible day for Atlanta. To see what had originally started as a peaceful protest to fight for justice for George Floyd, who was killed under police custody in Minneapolis. We have our own cases here in Brunswick, Georgia, with Ahmaud Arbery. These individuals, at least the organizers of this parade, had spoke to Brittany Miller, one of our reporters who was entrenched in this crowd, had told her that their desire was to have a peaceful protest. We know that the governor of Georgia, he encouraged a peaceful protest, but amid the COVID-19 pandemic, he wanted to make sure those protesters wore face masks. We also had Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. She was advocating that you have the right to protest. She wanted the city of Atlanta to have a peaceful protest. We just heard from our reporter Brittany Miller, who's in the field. She says that Atlanta Police Department has given its final and last warning for this crowd to disperse. They are located in front of the CNN headquarters in Atlanta, and they were putting on face masks and gas masks. If you have ever, I'm former military, if you have ever been sprayed with tear gas, the symptoms are incredibly difficult to breathe. You will have irritation to the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the lungs. The effects of breathing in tear gas can last for 30 seconds. It includes burning, watery sensation to the eyes, difficulty breathing, chest pain, excessive saliva, and even skin irritation. The Atlanta Police Department, Rick, has shown great restraint. We saw earlier the Atlanta Police Chief, Erica Shields. She actually went into the crowd. She spoke to the protesters. She had a heartfelt conversation that she understood the fight. She understood why many are taking to the streets to protest because of the miscarriage of justice and the narrative that we have seen in this country over and over again, where an African American is not given the right to have presumption of innocence, and they are instantly just perceived to be guilty, and many times while under police custody have lost their lives. We saw that with George Floyd, who is now, his death has inspired in many ways protests across the country. We're seeing the similar scene that we have in Atlanta. We have seen it in Minneapolis tonight, in New York City, in Ohio, in Denver, Colorado, in Los Angeles. The goal in Atlanta, Police Chief Erica Shields, is that she wants to not make this into an event where she has to arrest a lot of Georgians. Ashley Thompson, you are in the thick of, right in front of CNN's headquarters. We saw just a tragic view of an individual taking the opportunity to use this to destroy property of CNN, bashing in the windows in some of the restaurants that are directly surrounding it.
Yeah, I think someone might be trying to threaten us right now. Take a look at what's going on here in front of the CNN Center right now. This is just not stopping right now. They're continuing to smash the windows of the CNN Center, and a restaurant had the windows smashed just a moment ago. We now have law enforcement officers inside of the McCormick and Schmick over here. But right now, and a protester in front of me telling me that they don't all agree with this, and we actually just spoke with someone who had the same sentiment. And you're coming in soon.
Bottoms, Police Chief Erica Smith behind her to the right wearing the mask.
There may be some others joining us. Let me just speak to what's happening here today. I am a mother to 4 black children in America, one of whom is 18 years old. And when I saw the murder of George Floyd, I hurt like a mother would hurt. And on yesterday, when I heard there were rumors about violent protests in Atlanta, I did what a mother would do. I called my son and I said, "Where are you?" I said, "I cannot protect you, and black boys shouldn't be out today. So you're not going to out-concern me and out-care about where we are in America." I wear this each and every day, and I pray over my children each and every day. So what I see happening on the streets of Atlanta is not Atlanta. This is not a protest. This is not in the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr. This is chaos. A protest has purpose. When Dr. King was assassinated, we didn't do this to our city. So if you love this city that has had a legacy of black mayors and black police chiefs and people who care about this city, where more than 50% of the business owners in Metro Atlanta are minority business owners. If you care about this city, then go home and pray that somebody like Reverend Beasley will come and talk to you and give you some instructions on what a protest should look like and how you effectuate change in America. This police chief made a video on yesterday, pull it up on YouTube, where she said she was appalled to watch the murder of George Floyd. This woman did that. You're not honoring the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement. You're not protesting anything, running out with brown liquor in your hands, breaking windows in this city. T.I. and Killer Mike own half the West Side. So when you burn down this city, you're burning down our community. If you want change in America, go and register to vote. Show up at the polls on June 9th. Do it in November. That is the change we need in this country. You are disgracing our city. You are disgracing the life of George Floyd and every other person who has been killed in this country. We are better than this. We're better than this as a city. We are better than this as a country. Go home. Go home. In the same way I couldn't protect my son on yesterday, I cannot protect you out in those streets. You're throwing knives at our police officers. You are burning cars. You have to face the CNN building. Ted Turner started CNN in Atlanta 40 years ago because he believed in who we are as a city. There was a black reporter who was arrested on camera this morning who works for CNN. They are telling our stories, and you are disgracing their building. This is not the legacy of civil rights in America. This is chaos, and we're buying into it. This won't change anything. We're no longer talking about the murder of an innocent man. We're talking about how you're burning police cars on the streets of Atlanta, Georgia. Go home.
I've already said what I had to say. Atlanta is the place where people like me Killer Mike, other artists, creatives, other people who come from our culture, and other people who rise up out of the wreckage of the struggle that we all experience just by being born a certain color in this country. But Atlanta is a place where we can set an example of prosperity, and we've done that for generations. People like Dr. King, Maynard Jackson, Ambassador Young have paved the way for us. When everything else goes away, when you don't get treated right in New York, when you don't get treated right in LA, when you can't get treated right in Detroit, when you don't get treated right in St. Louis, when you don't get treated right in Alabama, Atlanta has been here for us. This city don't deserve it. However, I understand that a lot of others do. But we can't do this here. This is Wakanda. It's sacred. It must be protected.
I didn't want to come, and I don't want to be here. I'm the son of an Atlanta City police officer. My cousin is an Atlanta City police officer, and my other cousin, East Point police officer. And I got a lot of love and respect for police officers, down to the original 8 police officers in Atlanta that even after becoming police had to dress in a YMCA because white officers didn't want to get dressed with niggas. And here we are 80 years later. I watched a white officer assassinate a black man, and I know it tore your heart out. And I know it's crippling. And I have nothing positive to say in this moment, because I don't want to be here. But I'm responsible to be here because it wasn't just Dr. King and people dressed nicely who marched and protested to progress this city and so many other cities. It was people like my grandmother, people like my aunts and uncles who were members of SCLC and NAACP, and in particular, Reverend James Orange, Mrs. Alice Johnson, and Reverend Love, who we just lost last year. So I'm duty bound to be here to simply say that it is your duty not to burn your own house down for anger with an enemy. It is your duty to fortify your own house so that you may be a house of refuge in times of organization. And now is the time to plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize. It is time to beat up prosecutors you don't like at the podium. It is time to hold mayoral officers accountable, chiefs and deputy chiefs. Atlanta is not perfect, but we're a lot better than we ever were, and we're a lot better than cities are. I woke up wanting to see the world burn down yesterday. I'm tired of seeing black men die. He casually put his knee on a human being's neck for 9 minutes as he died like a zebra in the clutch of a lion's jaw. And we watch it like murder porn over and over again. So that's why children are burning to the ground. They don't know what else to do. And it is the responsibility of us to make this better. Right now, we don't want to see one officer charged. We want to see 4 officers prosecuted and sentenced. We don't want to see targets burning. We want to see the system that sets up for systemic racism burnt to the ground. And as I sit here in Georgia, home of Stevens, Georgia, former vice president of the Confederacy, white man said that law, fundamental law, stated that whites were naturally the superior race, and the Confederacy was built on a cornerstone. It's called a cornerstone speech. Look it up. The cornerstone speech that blacks would always be subordinate. That officer believed that speech because he killed that man like an animal. In this city, officers have done horrendous things and they have been prosecuted. This city's cut different. In this city, you can find over 50 restaurants owned by black women. I didn't say minority, and I didn't say women of color. So after you burn down your own home, what do you have left but charred and ash? CNN? Ted did a great thing. I love CNN, I love Cartoon Network, but I'd like to say to CNN right now, harm is enough. Stop feeding fear and anger every day. Stop making people feel so fearful. Give them hope. I'm glad they only took down a sign and defaced a building and they're not killing human beings like that policeman did. I'm glad that they only destroyed some brick and mortar and they didn't rip a father from a son. They didn't rip a son from a mother like the policeman did. When a man yells for his mother in duress and pain and she's dead, he is essentially yelling, please God, don't let it happen to me. And we watched it. So my question for us on the other side of this camera is, after it burns, will we be left with charred, or will we rise like a phoenix out of the ashes that Atlanta has always done? Will we use this as a moment to say that we will not do what other cities have done, and in fact, we will get better than we've been? We got good enough to destroy cash money. You don't have to worry about going to jail for something petty. We got smart enough to decriminalize marijuana. How smart are we going to be in the next 15 or 20 years to keep us ahead of this curve? So that much like when South Africa suffered apartheid, you had Andy and other politicians that could make sure that Atlanta said, Coca-Cola, we love you, but if you don't pull out of South Africa, we're not going to drink Coca-Cola anymore. Coca-Cola jumped on their side and apartheid ended. So we have an opportunity now. Because I'm mad, I don't have any good advice. But what I can tell you is that if you sit in your homes tonight, instead of burning your home to the ground, you will have time to properly plot, plan, strategize, and organize and mobilize in an effective way. And two of the most effective ways is first taking your butt to the computer and making sure you fill out your census so that people know who you are and where you are. The next thing is making sure you exercise your political bully power and going to local elections and beating up the politicians that you don't like. You got a prosecutor sent your partner to jail and you know it was bullshit, put a new prosecutor in there. Now's your election to do it. You want a different senator that's more progressive, that broke marijuana through, now is the time to do that. But it is not time to burn down your home. I love and I respect you. I hate I don't have more to say. I hate I can't fix it in a snap. I hate Atlanta's not perfect or as good as we are. But we have to be better than this moment. We have to be better than burning down our own homes. Because if we lose Atlanta, what else we got? We lose an ability to plot, to plan, to strategize, to organize, and to properly mobilize. I want you to go home. I want you to talk to 10 of your friends. I want you guys to come up with real solutions. I would like for the Atlanta City Police Department to bring back the Community Review Board, one that Alice Johnson was formerly under Chief Turner. We need a review board here because we need to get ahead of it before an officer does some stupid shit. We need to get ahead of it. That's my recommendation to my mayor and my chief. Let's get a review board. Let's get ahead of it. And let's give them power. We don't need an officer that makes a mistake once, twice, 3 times, and finally he kills a boy on national TV, and the next thing you know, the country is burning down. We don't need a dumbass president repeating what segregation is saying. You start looting, we start shooting. But the problem is some officers are black and some people don't shoot back. And that's not good for our community. I love and respect you all. I hope that we find a way out of it because I don't have the answers, but I do know we must plot. We must plan, we must strategize, organize, and mobilize. Thank you for allowing me some time to speak. I'd like to appreciate our chief for what she said on YouTube. I thought it was very bold to do. I'd like to appreciate our mayor for talking to us like a black woman and telling us to take our asses home. And I'd like to thank my friend for convincing me to come here. And I prefer to jump into and see my health.
Well, thank you very much. I guess I'm one of the fortunate ones that grew up here in metropolitan Atlanta 83 years ago. So I've really seen real change. And I appreciate Mayor Bottoms for asking me to come and stand here with the group because, change is here. I remember very well when we couldn't even venture in this building. But now the mayor is the mayor of this city. We've got a great chief here. And I think that word from the mayor is to go home. Because when you're in a crowd, the adrenaline is pumping, and you didn't really mean to get in trouble when you came out. But in fact, when you're following the crowd, you know, whatever the crowd does that you're with, you're going to be a part of it. And so I would urge you to stay calm. The nation is changing, and I want you to be a part of the change and not be a statistic. Thank you.
We're joined by Reverend Dr. Bernice King.
Good evening, everybody, and I want to thank the mayor for calling us together. This is a tough moment, and if I might take one liberty to just say, I've obviously been in the place of the daughter, George, 6-year-old left without her daddy, who was killed senselessly, as my father was assassinated senselessly. It sent me on a journey of anger. And I fought that demon a long time. And this is a moment where people are feeling a lot of stuff right now and are fed up. And as I stand in this moment and I look at my journey, I have to make an appeal to my brothers and sisters, because I realize that the only way to get constructive change is through nonviolent means. You know, a lot of people have been using my father's words. Sometimes I get a little upset when people do that and co-opt those words and take them out of context. But I realize that he gave his life to this nation. He was a son of this state and of this city, born on the soils of this city, on Auburn Avenue. But he said to us, riots are the language of the unheard. And the part we often miss when people use it is the part about the unheard. This is a time when we all have to listen. We have to listen to the cries that are coming out of the hearts and the souls of my young brothers and sisters and all of the others that are in the streets of America right now and in our city. But if there's anything I can say to them as they cry out to look at these changes, because the changes have to happen. We can't go back to yesterday. We can't keep doing things like we've been doing it in this nation. We've got to deal with systemic racism and white supremacy once and for all. But the only pathway I know to do this is through nonviolent means. It is a proven method. It did not fail my father and them. As many people who think it failed, it did not fail them, because one thing about it is when you really understand it and really practice it, it brings about the results. So right now it's about what is the end goal. The end goal is we want change and we want it now. But change never comes through violence. It is not a solution. Violence, in fact, creates more problems. It is not a solution. Nonviolent way is the way, because the means and the ends have to be consistent. We will never get to the end of justice and equity and true peace, which is not merely the absence of tension, but the presence of justice, unless we do it through nonviolent means. And so I'm just speaking from my heart now and saying, I feel you. Trust me, I feel you. I've been close to the edge this time. But I can't go back to all that I felt inside and the rage that was inside that wanted me to destroy people and destroy lives. as Martin Luther King's dream. Because I know that the only way to get what we really want and really get it, and not just crumbs, is through nonviolence and peace. And so please, let's stay focused in that way. And remember, everybody is not on the same page. There are people who would try to incite a race war in this country. Let's not fall into their hands and into the trap. There's another way. So in the name of Martin Luther King Jr., from the shores of Atlanta, Georgia, and from the 5-year-old girl who lost her daddy to gun violence senselessly at the hands of law enforcement. Let's do this the peaceful and nonviolent way to deal with the evils and the conditions of our time. But I will say, as he said in his I Have a Dream speech, if we go back to business as usual, we're going to be in trouble. Let's not go back to business as usual. Let's deal with these issues that people are crying out of their soul and their spirit, the conditions that have led to this kind of action. Thank you.
We've been joined also by Derek Bozeman. Thank you. And we're going to keep it brief because we got to get Chief Shields back into our command center, and I want to give you all a chance to
Let me say, as one who was born and raised in this city and have led many protests myself, what we saw tonight should disturb all of us. The beauty of this city that's called Atlanta is we always had the Atlanta way of doing things. I don't know what the intent was tonight. We had what was a peaceful protest that descended into something that none of us can be proud of. I joined with the mayor. What I saw were young people who were hungry and thirsty to know what freedom tastes like. And so I saw a lot of teenagers out there. And so our message to them is go home and learn what this democracy is all about. My belief in the Constitution is whole, that we should have the right to redress our government for grievances. But the good thing about this leadership in Atlanta, even when we disagree, they're willing to listen. And to Chief Shields tonight, the Atlanta Police Department ought to be commended. They showed an extraordinary amount of restraint. But let's be very real here. Some of the people who were down there tonight did not come for Brother Floyd. They did not come for Ahmaud Arbery. They came there with the intent to be destructive. They came there with an agenda to create havoc. Because what does shattering a car window, breaking into a restaurant, how does that move the margin closer towards freedom? And so we say to these young people, learn from the best of who we are in Atlanta, a city too busy to hate. We have to pause sometime to remind ourselves of that. But what we saw tonight was destruction, and it was for destruction purposes. It had no real intent, no real intention other than to be what we saw and what we experienced. And so clearly, Atlanta history has always been, she will take time and pause. If you're trying to be heard, then we want to hear what you have to say. And that has been the way we've done it in Atlanta. But what we saw down here in the last hour or two has nothing to do with those brothers who are crying out from the grave for freedom. It had everything to do with people who really don't care about this city and don't care about real freedom and real justice. Thank you.
It's enough. It's enough. That's why you need to go home. If you're trying to effectuate change, go home. It's enough. Anything else? if you care about a peaceful protest, you're not in the middle of one anymore. So if you want a peaceful protest, go home. Organize and come back on a peaceful day. This is not a peaceful night. I am, because they're disruptors. We are all angry. This hurts. This hurts everybody in this room. But what are you changing by tearing up a city? You've lost all credibility now. This is not how we changed America. This is not how we change the world with the leadership of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This is something else. And this isn't about justice. If you're breaking out windows and you're running down the street with liquor in your hands, whose memory is that honoring? One more question and we're going to get back in the command center. I absolutely can. And Killer Mike mentioned one thing. We eliminated cash bail bonds in the city of Atlanta. We closed our doors to ICE. We are in the process of closing our city jail and converting it into a center of equity, health, and wellness, with the leadership and alongside real community activists. Real people who are part of a real movement. That's not what's happening out there tonight. We have at-promise centers going up across this city where our police recruits go in once a week and volunteer with the kids in the community so that their first encounter with them is not when they're chasing them down the street. Their first encounter is when they're talking to them about their life and telling them how things can be better for them. We do things differently in this city, and we always have. That's why whatever is happening on our streets tonight, that's not Atlanta. You just go back to wherever you came from, because you are disgracing this city. That's not who and what Atlanta is. All right. Thank you.
You have been watching a very emotional and tearful plea from the mayor of Atlanta, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottom, really advocating for those who are, if you have a loved one who is in this area that is part of this protest, which initially started out peaceful but has turned with some very violent pockets at times. She wants you to tell your loved one, go home. In fact, her exact words is, this is not a protest. This is not in the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr. This is chaos, and a protest has purpose. She says this simply, what you're seeing on TV is not reflective of Atlanta. The mayor reminded you that if you love the city, this city has a legacy of African-American mayors, African-American police chiefs. Again, she stressed, if you care about the city, then go home.
And Sean,
correct me
if I'm wrong, she sounded
gas all over the place.
less like a politician and more like a mom.
Yes.
And she was giving very clear instructions to those who are out on the street. Now the question is, did they hear her?
Well, that's why we are encouraging, if you have a loved one and you know that your loved one or your friend is at this protest, and they may have absolute great intentions, because the mayor said in her own words that she knows that there were people that had intended to go to this protest and to peacefully protest injustice. But she made it clear it's no longer a peaceful protest. So if you have a loved one if you have someone, a friend, a cousin, a brother, an uncle, a loved one, call them and tell them to go home.
We heard from Bernice King talking about her father, invoking his name. In the name of Martin Luther King Jr., she said, from the soils of Georgia, let's do this the peaceful and nonviolent way to deal with the evils of our time. We also heard from Killer Mike, who spoke very, very eloquently. And I'm getting a lot of emails from viewers asking us to post the entirety of his speech on our website. And I'm sure that we will do that on the website and also on the CBS 46 streaming app. But Killer Mike speaking from the heart. We have to be better than this moment. We have to be better than burning down our own homes. He said it is the responsibility of us to make this better right now. And you heard from not just Killer Mike, but from other people that we've spoken to over the course of this afternoon, of this historic and sad afternoon, Sean.
Rapper T.I., he was, many people know him from his movies, also from many of his hit songs, but he has remained in Atlanta. He still lives in Atlanta, and even he said that this is not reflective of our city. He wants Georgians and Atlantans who are participating in what has become a violent protest. He wants you to go home. In fact, I'm trying to pull up some of the notes that I have from T.I.'s speech. He was very impassioned. In fact, he convinced Killer Mike to come to this press conference. Killer Mike was very vocal, saying that he didn't want to do this, but it felt like it was his obligation because Killer Mike said, it's your duty not to burn your own house down for anger with an enemy. It's your duty to fortify your own house. T.I. also saying that he condemns the protests. He says Atlanta has been here for us. This city does not deserve this. Now, Brittany Miller is on location. Brittany, from your vantage point, you were where Atlanta Police Department has shown tremendous restraint. They do not want to arrest people. I've noticed that more have been arrested besides the 4 that you showed us earlier. And they were putting on masks and warning possible tear gas. Is that still possibly going to happen tonight?
They are still in riot gear. They still have those masks on. I was told by officers that they would be deploying gas, at any moment now, but they have not so far. Let me give you a live look at the scene right now. They have cleared out most of Centennial Olympic Park Drive, and they have sort of pushed those protesters back, but they have them locked in. There are officers parked at the next block over, so they pretty much have these protesters blocked in. They cannot go anywhere, even if they wanted to. These officers are just spread out really at all 4 corners of this intersection with those sticks in hand, with their masks on, with their shields on, just standing here as they continue to push those protesters back. I'm sure you heard them earlier when they would get in that line and then
tear gas in here. It burns like hell.
Zip ties on the side of officers' belts. We also see them on the side of their vests. Protesters are still chanting. Protesters are still chanting. They've been chanting since 3 o'clock this afternoon, and they have not let up. Their signs are still being held high. Officers, though, are just standing here, which is, it's interesting because we don't know what they're thinking. We don't know what they're about to do. As I told you, they told me that they were going to deploy gas. We have not seen that happen. We did see some of the protesters throwing what looked like smoke bombs or something towards the officers just to obscure their view a little bit. But after that, we haven't seen anything else in terms of any gas being deployed. So we're gonna park here. We are safe here. Officers said that we are safe here at this corner. We're gonna continue to watch and wait and see what happens. I'll send it back to you. In the meantime, of course, we'll keep this live picture up for you.
Brittany, before we let you go, tear gas, I used to be in the United States Army, and we were prepared by training with tear gas. And tear gas, if it is sprayed, it will have a quick reaction to disperse that crowd, because the minute you inhale it, it creates a burning sensation, watery eyes, difficult breathing, chest pain, excessive saliva, and even skin irritation. My concern also for you and for our crews that are positioned there, are you far away? Do you know where they may possibly begin to allow that spray to go to that crowd? Are you near that?
We are behind the officers, so if and when they do deploy the gas, they'll be doing it so away from us. So if we do inhale, I'm actually smelling something now. I don't know what that is. It smells like something's burning. If we do inhale that gas, I honestly don't know. I haven't inhaled it before, but we are pretty far away. I do smell something in the air. I don't know what it is. I don't know if something is burning. I don't know if it's a firework. I don't know if that gas has been deployed, but officers are ready. No? Okay.
I can tell you, Brittany, I can tell you, Brittany,
we don't
from
know what we're
experience.
smelling.
I can tell you, Brittany, from experience, that tear gas has not been deployed yet because we saw it last night in Ohio. And the minute those protesters get a whiff of that stuff, they're running. There are many ways that people will have to actually take the pain out of their eyes, is that they'll have to pour milk over their eyes to give it relief. I don't think this crowd has a true understanding that if Atlanta Police Department deploys tear gas to disperse the crowd, they're going to be running fast to get away from it. So just be careful out there, Brittany. We are certainly wanting you to be safe, but I see to your left.
Looks like the officers are now marching. They are pushing forward.
Officers are moving right now. Officers are moving right now. We did see earlier pepper spray where people had to pour milk on top of their eyes. But they are lining up. They're getting into some sort of line here, stacked on top of each other. We see state troopers here as well in uniform, in riot gear as well. So they have just gotten some backup. Atlanta Police has just gotten some backup from Georgia State Patrol. But again, we did see people pepper sprayed earlier today, and their eyes were burning, their eyes were red, they were coughing, and they had to pour the milk that you were talking about over their eyes. So they just sort of walked closer to this crowd, but again, they're just standing here. So we'll stay on this shot, and of course, as soon as anything happens, we'll bring it to you live.
And Brittany, from what we're looking from this vantage point on the left side of our screen, the crowd does look like it has significantly decreased compared to earlier when it was peaceful and they started the march in Centennial Park.
We started to hear more commands from the armored vehicles, and soon after that, we saw them kind of slowly
I think you can see
this
going down Marietta Street towards Georgia State University. There's still a good amount of people here, and they're really spread out all across this intersection, so it's hard to see from our vantage point because we're on the ground, but I think if we were a little higher up, you could see that there are still a lot of people here. There's a significant amount, excuse me, there are a lot less people than we saw maybe a couple of hours ago, but now that the sun has gone down, now these officers have been able to push them back. We don't see as many as we saw maybe at 3 o'clock or maybe at 7 o'clock, but there's still a significant amount of people here to the point where these streets are still shut down. Traffic hasn't been able to get through for much of the day now. So I don't know what's going to happen next because officers have to push these crowds back at two different portions of the street, or two different intersections, or two different ways, if you will. They're not all gathered in one location. They're here to my right or here in front of me, and then they're also here to my left. So we're going to have to see how this all plays out.
If you're just joining us, this is special coverage on CBS 46 News, team coverage of riots that have struck downtown Atlanta today. We really have seen a little bit of everything. These were peaceful protests. They began that way. At the scene, at the hands of that police officer who today was charged with third-degree murder. We're told that there may be some more charges for some of the other officers, 3 other officers who were there during the time of his apprehension and arrest. People coming out understandably upset. We heard from leaders say that they were appalled by this. We heard from Chief Shields, who actually waded out into the crowd during calmer moments this afternoon and said, I get it. I understand why you're so upset, and we are trying to do things here in the city of Atlanta that are going to bring about more equity and change for the black community here. And she really showing great leadership, going out and calmly speaking to the protesters. But then within about a half an hour or so of that, things turned ugly. And we began to see the protesters start to lose sort of their patience. We saw a police vehicle lit on fire. We see another vehicle right there.
She's twerking at one of the reporters.
Another vehicle in flames. And we saw protesters smashing the windshields and the windows of about 6 or 7 police cruisers right in front of CNN headquarters.
And really a frightening, at least the image, but CNN's own, they have police force that were inside the CNN headquarters and on that foyer where they had broken out all of those glass windows. According to eyewitnesses that we were talking to on the scene, the officers actually had pulled their weapons to keep the crowds from advancing into CNN's headquarters. This has what started, as you mentioned, Rick, as a peaceful protest has turned, it has decreased and turned.
To be here in the midst with all of these young people, both black and white men, and just to see, wow, I don't even know. I'm gonna try to get a little closer, and as you see, media's here. Wow.
Is gathered over here, and they've actually set another car on fire. I'm not sure who the car belongs to, if it's a police car or if it was just a fire. There were a couple of people over there. They were breaking the glass initially. A lot of people have gathered over here. They're screaming no justice, peace. That crowd also, if you look over here, the Hall of Fame store, and also here this Starbucks, completely destroyed here. There's glass everywhere. They busted out the windows over here. If you look right over here, this Starbucks has been completely broken. The front doors as well. People are actually starting to go inside. Again, we're here on Marietta Boulevard, not far from where you saw a lot of that action from the protests earlier today. Back to you guys.
Thank you, Yasmina. I see them walking into the Starbucks. Has there been any cases, at least from your vantage point, of actual looting?
Having a hard time hearing you. Say that one more time, please.
Has there been looting at the Starbucks? I see people going in and out, and they broke the windows, but have they at least respected the property inside of Starbucks?
Yes, so where we are right now, I actually don't see any police officers in this area. Again, if you look back down this way, you can see that car on fire. There's still some more people down there. They've now taken a trash can, I believe, and thrown that over as well.
Obviously, when this car catches on fire, it has fuel inside its tank. Are there any police officers, Yasmina, to stop people at least from going closer to that fire to make sure no one gets hurt or injured?
In the area that I'm in right now, I have not seen any police officers. Maybe 10 minutes before we walked over here, we saw one driving by. But as of right now, when I look around, I don't see any police officers in this area. Again, you can see over here, this Starbucks store, they've broken the doors here, and some people were going in earlier.
Yasmina, I'm wondering if you could talk to, I want you to be safe, but I'm wondering if you could ask those young men behind you if they happen to hear the message of the mayor and other city leaders asking them to go home and reminding them about the nonviolent history of the civil rights movement here in this city.
Wow, let me.
Fuck 12. I think we've got a lot of profanity. So.
I think that you're having trouble with your shot. So Yasmina, we have just learned from one of our photographers who's on the scene. Police have confirmed, the Atlanta Police Department, that tear gas was dispersed about 10 minutes ago. Our photographer, actually, we lost our shot from him because he was running away, trying to get away from inhaling any of that tear gas. You're looking at the right of your screen. Again, there is the mayor, along with rappers and the daughter of the late civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr., they joined Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms at the headquarters just a few minutes ago to urge Atlantans who are angry about the recent deaths of African Americans at the hands of white police officers to go home. And if you really want to make change, go vote. I know that it's hard to do when you're in the thick of this and you're angry, but even T.I., who is a rapper, and a lot of millennials who we see there at this scene who can relate to T.I., he says, this is not protecting our city. This is not what Atlanta is about. We have reporters all covering this on the ground. We're going to go to Ashley Thompson. Ashley, the last time we saw you, they were continuing to burst out windows at CNN's headquarters. Tell us, has it improved from your vantage point?
There are other officers.
Well, I guess that's, your perspective of improved. They have since moved, or been moved from the CNN Center. So right now we're over here at this intersection, and it's been kind of like a standoff. We've been seeing this all night with the demonstrators and those law enforcement personnel. It has calmed down a little bit, but like I said, every time you say it calms down, something happens and it flares up again. People scream, they run. We saw a lot of people damaging property earlier, those cars and the buildings, and I gotta say, I listened to that press conference, as we all did, and I do agree that there are some people out here who are not here for the cause. They really are here just to make trouble. We have run into people who are angry with us and threatening us. And so we do have to be careful down here, and we listen to the mayor's remarks, we listen to Chief Shields' remarks. This is no longer the peaceful protest that it was earlier today when this began at 3 o'clock. The crowd has dwindled, but there are still a lot of people out here. And we actually just spoke with a state trooper who was right here next to us. He told us they are going to start moving them back even further, and they've been doing this for hours. They moved the crowd. Obviously, this is very calculated. They moved the crowd maybe 10 feet, 20 feet, pushing them back, not letting them cross the intersection. The goal, obviously, is to disperse the crowd. And if you take a look at the crowd out here, you can see much more law enforcement on the scene. And like I said, the crowd has dwindled. People have left because things have turned violent. I mean, the CNN Center, it really is just incredible what that building looks like right now, just totally smashed out. All the windows in the front, the windows here at this restaurant, the windows on the side, but they have since been moved away. And Sean, I heard you talking earlier about tear gas. I gotta tell you, I walked through this intersection not long ago, and my eyes just began to water. Obviously, there was some lingering tear gas in the area. We don't know if they're going to continue to do that to get some of these demonstrators to go home, but obviously that is one option. Like I said, these law enforcement officers right here are going to start pushing the crowd back. They're going to do that on every side of this intersection, just really hoping to de-escalate the crowd, hoping to calm everyone down. And people are incredibly emboldened out here. I mean, these people are incredibly bold, and they know that officers are not making many arrests. So that's why we're seeing those people smashing into the windows and smashing into cop cars, because people are not being arrested to the numbers that you would think anyway. We obviously have seen some arrests and we have seen some tear gas, but it hasn't been mass arrest out here, and people know that. And so I think that they are being very emboldened. The crowd is relatively peaceful right now. You can hear those chants still in the crowd, but we're going to continue to monitor the situation. Obviously, this is a very fluid situation. This is changing minute by minute. A lot of anger, a lot of frustration, and it is nighttime. And so there are big concerns with where this may lead and where protesters may go. So right now officers are still trying to de-escalate the situation, trying to keep all of these demonstrators calm. And we're going to continue to stay out here and continue to stay safe. And hopefully this continues to be a safe protest. You can see one of the demonstrators right there. A lot of anger, a lot of emotion. We've been seeing it all day long. For the hours these demonstrators have been out here, emotions have been running extremely high. It's been dangerous at times, but it's been peaceful at times. And right now, it seems as if it is one of those peaceful times.
Ashley, before we let you go, I'm not sure if there's anyone that you could grab that would be willing to have a conversation with you. If you could ask them, the mayor just held a press conference along with rapper T.I., Atlanta activist Killer Mike, along with Bernice King, the daughter of the late civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr., and they all said this is not reflective of Atlanta and that they should go home. Can you see if anyone there would talk to you and see if they would respect the message of the mayor and go home?
Get it right, man.
Hold on. Let me ask you this. The mayor has called for demonstrators to go home, saying that the message is now.
I ain't going home. What do a black man do? Do we shoot when we get out of the police store and we get pulled over? Do we get out with our hands up? Because we fear for our life out here.
What do you say to the mayor and T.I. and Killer Mike who are saying go home?
Tell them to get out here and do it. Tell them to get out here and do it.
So there's your answer, Sean. A lot of these people are just really frustrated. It's even hard to get some of these questions in. I heard the mayor earlier, and I heard some of those high-profile celebrities calling for these demonstrators to go home. They are really destroying downtown Atlanta. But you just heard it from one of the protesters. They said they need to get out here. What are we supposed to do? And so that is what we're hearing over and over again. And obviously that's why there are still so many people out here, and they feel the same way. They don't want to go home. They don't know what to do. And this is the only way they know how to get their frustrations out.
Ashley, thanks very much. You know, we take a look at these scenes. It's unbelievable. You see police force, different teams within law enforcement, all there, the riot police, the SWAT police, and yet the city is burning. There are cars now burning. We saw a police cruiser on fire earlier. Now we see two separate cars, perhaps vehicles in flames. And so the message of nonviolence, the history of this city, of the civil rights movement being forgotten right now, not on the minds of those who are out there protesting. Instead, all they can think about is the anger and the hurt. And Mayor Bottom said, we're all angry. She said, we're all angry. This hurts everybody. But what are you changing by tearing up a city? You've lost all credibility now.
She was in tears. She spoke, as you mentioned earlier,
More
not
police
really
are on their
as
way.
a mayor or a politician.
All
She
right.
spoke as a mother.
Wow.
She has children of her own. She understands
where
the
we
plight
are.
of what many of these young African-American males go through when there's a constant miscarriage of justice. But tomorrow and the days after, when these images are spread,
We
not
need to
only
see
in
it
Atlanta,
firsthand. We
but
need
across
to.
the country and even internationally, because
Very careful
we
tonight,
are
as you can see,
in
police
their
barricades
microscope
are
right now.
everywhere. I am
They're going to see these
walking back
pictures.
to
They're
the
not
car. So
going
what
to
do
see
you all think?
a peaceful
Absolutely,
protest that
Angela.
was
Thank you for
marching
sharing. These young
for
people
the
are not
justice
playing.
of the
They're
death
fed
of
up.
George Floyd, who
what do you
died
all
at the
think?
hands, or actually the knee, of a police officer in
Wow.
Minneapolis. This is what organizers had originally proposed
My
and dreamed
Lord.
for the city
You
of
can see
Atlanta, to
police
have a
barricades,
peaceful
of course, right
protest
there.
to create
As I'm
dialogue.
walking back
But
to the
what
car,
we
I'm
have
walking from
is
CNN.
a city
Let me get out
that
of the
is
street.
on fire. It is tragic. It is sad. And as the daughter of the late civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr., Bernice King said,
but I am
non-violent means is the only way to get the message across.
Rodney,
It is
it's real out
proven
here,
time and
man.
time again, yet the images that we are seeing right now
are giving
of
detours to
Atlanta,
the
this
traffic, of
fire
course.
has
Let's
now
say Pastor DT
gone
was
beyond
over here. I
a car
walked there
blaze.
myself,
It's now a structure fire. We're not quite
most
sure
definitely, Rod,
what
most
everything that is
definitely.
being
David
consumed
Wilson,
in flames.
this
But
is what we
Ayanna,
talked about for
Crystal,
years.
you are on location. Maybe you can give us
And
some
just to
insight.
see it,
Is
to
it
witness
trees,
it,
or
I
is
mean,
this
I know they're
now
protesting
a structure
everywhere, but
involved
when
with
you're
those cars
here
that were on fire?
in the midst of it, and you're feeling this emotion, you're feeling, you feel
Ayanna?
anger, you feel
away,
the overwhelming
and you can see
sense
the flames are
that
spreading.
something
It
could
started
happen
out
at any
very
moment.
small, and within minutes it is spreading. We can see protesters and
I mean,
demonstrators
it
running
does sound
over
like a shooting.
that way. Again, people are getting anxious. They don't want to go home. People
Go
weren't
to
listening to
CNN
what the
and
mayor
tell
said
Don Lemon
because
to give
they
me back
are
that
out
$20
here
he owed me.
and they
I couldn't-
want their voices to
they
be
were pulling
heard. They
people
are
out of
frustrated,
CNN,
but
Rod,
as we
so,
can see,
wow,
things have
this
gotten
was real.
violent and
This is,
destructive. Now we saw we saw the
this was
Atlanta
real
police
tonight.
car set on fire, and
It
now
almost
over
makes you
there
wanna
we
cry.
see something on fire. We don't know exactly what it is, but it has spread pretty quickly. Right
never
here
seen
we
nothing like
have
this in my
police
life.
who are blocking off the street. There were some tense moments where protesters were in their face, but now they've gone over to where that fire is. The police officer did tell me that they did deploy the tear gas. My photographer and I were right there. We had to run. We couldn't breathe. My eyes are still burning from that, and it seems like most of the protesters are now headed over that way. But if you go have my photographer pan over here, you still see over here there's still a big, large group in front of the CNN Center and McCormick and Smith's restaurant. So
I do believe that we have to be more mindful
throughout the
as
city here in downtown.
not just black
But again,
people, but just people
are
in
not
general.
going home, and they're getting anxious and they're
When
frustrated.
we put ourselves
and
in
they're
compromising
yelling, and they're
situations,
getting in the police officer's face,
that
and
it
the
doesn't
police are
end
showing
well.
A lot of restraint right now. They want this to be peaceful. They don't want to
fault
have
the
to
police
get arrest,
officers.
but we haven't seen anything
We already know that
escalate with
the climate that we're in is racist. So I mean that's a given. It is not as if it is not as if. I believe so. I believe so.
But we will continue to keep our eye on it.
They're
We'll
calling.
send it back to you guys.
All right, Ayanna. If you're watching us on Peachtree TV,
they probably call the National Guard. But here's my take with Atlanta.
On CBS 46.
What does tearing up Atlanta have to do with Minnesota? I know you want to. I know you want
in the city of Atlanta.
I know you want to have a voice.
Protests after
but
the
then you
death
tear
of
down.
George
So I just don't see
Floyd
the
in
logic.
Minnesota.
It makes
We're told
absolutely
that the
no
White
sense.
House is under
You're
lockdown
frustrated.
right
I know
now.
you're
People
angry.
gathered outside
But you
to
need.
protest
We
Floyd's
need
death. There are protests
a
underway
more
right now
focused
in New York City, in Louisville, Kentucky,
strategy
in Dallas, Texas,
as it pertains to this. We need to teach our children, continues to teach them how to engage law enforcement, how to engage the courts, how to engage life, so that we can avoid tragedies such as this. Because it is bad, and it could have gotten worse. Had the police not acted soon enough, they would have torn CNN down.
This is not the way to show your anger. Your anger and feelings are understandable, but this is not the way to accomplish change. Bernice King, the daughter of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., saying that the only way to achieve change is through nonviolent means.
We even heard from rapper T.I. and activist Killer Mike. Killer Mike making it very clear, condemning those individuals who are out there using this as an opportunity to cause destruction to a city that he loves. In fact, he says if you want to change anything here in America, register to vote. Show up to the polls on June 9th. That's the change that we need in this country. That message also reinforced by the mayor, that this is disgracing our city and the life of George Floyd and anyone else who was killed in this country. The mayor added, we are better than this as a city and as a country. We're no longer talking about the murder of an innocent man. We are now talking about the burning of streets and property in Atlanta. The mayor says, go home. As you can see on the left side of your screen, there is a fire truck that is starting to arrive to hopefully douse these flames to keep this from spreading further. It appears at this point that it's only trees and cars that have caught on fire. But again, this could be explosive at any time. We have reporters who are out in the field. We spoke to Ashley Thompson. She spoke to some of the protesters on the street to ask them, do they respect the message that T.I. and Killer Mike had? Will you go home? And their response was, no, we're not going home. They are angry. This is a story that we have been following since 2:30 this afternoon. What had originally started out to hopefully be a peaceful protest. Almost thousands of people gathered at Centennial Olympic Park. They were marching and they came towards State Farm Arena at the point where then there was a barrier with police not allowing them to go further. And it was at that point, despite
I know what you're saying.
Great restraint, making a commitment, according to Atlanta Police Chief Erica Shields. We don't want to make this an opportunity of arresting people. In fact, I am at awe at the police chief taking the time to walk into the crowd and actually speak to the protesters and tell them she understood why they were doing this, but to go home. Do not let this become the same images that we've seen in Louisville. But Ashley Thompson is at the fire. Ashley, I see that some of the fire trucks are trying to get their way through the crowd to try to get this fire out.
That's right. They're trying to come in right now because we've got 3 cars on fire over here. They look like they are Georgia Tech police cruisers. I'm not sure when this fire started. We saw the flames go up about just a couple minutes ago, and someone just threw some liquids on us. As I said, a lot of people are very frustrated, and they're showing their animosity and their frustration to the media as well. We just got drenched with some kind of liquid. But as you can see here, is the fire truck coming through, trying to put these fires out right now. We are over here by a hotel across the street from the Hall of Fame in downtown Atlanta, and it looks like protesters have hit up that Hall of Fame already, that beloved event venue, the Hall of Fame behind me. You can see people have really smashed the windows out over there. The protesters have moved. We are just the intersection over from where we are, where we last saw you. And this is what's happening right now. It looks like maybe some tear gas is being deployed. This is just insanity. This is crazy. Take a look at what's going on here.
Hopefully you're not in that area, Ashley, because they have dispersed the tear gas. The crowds, as you can see, will run quickly. Tear gas is very effective. If you have ever had experience with it, I trained Army military, and tear gas will cause chest pain. It will burn the eyes. It will make it very difficult to breathe. If you don't have a gas mask and you breathe that in, you're in trouble. So as you can see, where that gas has been deployed, the crowd has completely dispersed. This was done in an effort to get that fire truck through, to get to where those fires are, where 3 cars, as Ashley mentioned, are now engulfed in flames.
Yep. And you see people still out there, even with the smoke being thrown into the crowd to try to disperse them. They are still out there protesting, and those flames continue to burn. And it really just is such a sad scene, you know. And this is a week, Sean, where we heard the governor actually talk about the possibility of having the Republican National Convention relocate from its original site. It's supposed to be in North Carolina this summer, to Atlanta, wanting to put Atlanta in the international spotlight by holding a high-profile political event here. There is no way that the Republican National Committee would consider having any of their convention here in Atlanta, given the scene that's playing out on the streets tonight. This is a black eye for Atlanta, and it's very sad because there are so many good community organizers and leaders who are honestly trying to make a difference in this community, trying to answer some of the concerns of the citizens, the rightful and justified concerns of some of the citizens of Atlanta. To have this happen tonight, to see this, it is just sad. It really
We
is.
even heard from Atlanta activist Killer Mike. He says, if we lose our city, what else do we have? This is creating a narrative for our city, that these images will play out not only on newscasts here in Atlanta, but this has become an international event. And for many who are angry and hurting about the injustice of George Floyd, when the message has been, according to the mayor, Atlanta City Mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, she says the message is lost. If you had great intentions to help advocate for justice for George Floyd, you have lost that message with these images. We're going to go to our reporter who is on the scene right now. I believe that we are going to Yasmina Alston. Yasmina, just terrible. A Starbucks store that's directly behind you was looted, and also windows broken out and defaced with graffiti. And it appears that they have been sprayed with tear gas over there too.
Well, a lot has happened here in the last 10 minutes or so. There's a lot of tear gas. It's making it very difficult for us to breathe. A lot of coughing. This is that same scene that we showed you not too long ago where the cars were actually set on fire. You can still see those fires over there. Maybe about 10 minutes ago or so, Atlanta police, they were set up behind us. And they made their way into this area to come and disperse the crowds. That's when the tear gas came. You can see the fire trucks are over here as well. So the tear gas burning our eyes. A lot of people scattered, of course, when that happened. So we're going to take a quick break and send it back to you guys.
Yeah. Understandable. Protect yourself, Yasmina. I feel your pain. I went through that in training with the military. Let's look at the images to the right. This is something that the mayor of Atlanta was tearful about. She just held a press conference less than an hour ago, stressing the need for protesters to go home. This was no longer peaceful. This is now out of control, according to the mayor. The mayor joined with her rapper T.I. and Atlanta civil rights activist Bernice King, who is the daughter of the civil rights leader of Martin Luther King Jr. Bernice condemned what is happening here in Atlanta today. And she said the only way, if you want to get the message of injustice out, is to follow the means of her father, and that's non-violent, peaceful protests. We are no longer seeing that here in Atlanta. This is tragic images for our city and heartbreaking. But on the other side, I am African American. I have 2 African American sons, and I get it, just like any African American who has children and I've had a cousin who was killed in Chicago in violent crime. And I understand the Black Lives Matter movement, but spraying BLM on the CNN building and defacing its property, that's not reflective of what the Black Lives Movement is about. Not whatsoever. These are people who have hijacked the opportunity to protest injustice, because it does exist. We've seen the narrative over and over again. In Brunswick, Georgia right now, with the death and murder of Ahmaud Arbery. It's fresh on a lot of these young people's minds who are out there. They are hurting, they are angry. But Killer Mike and the mayor said it best. If you want change in America, register to vote. Show up to the polls June 9th. This is the change we need in this country. According to Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, this that you're watching, the burning of our city, is a disgrace. And the life of George Floyd and anyone else who has been egregiously felt the miscarriage of justice, that message has been lost when that protest turned unruly in front of CNN's headquarters.
And again, just to remind people who may not have been paying attention hours ago when this protest began, it really started off so peacefully.
There was prayer before.
There were prayer circles. There were people bowing their heads in prayer, in solidarity. They were making their voices heard in a powerful and peaceful way. For it to have been transformed into this, it is just the complete opposite of what organizers were hoping to achieve today. They were hoping to have a city come out to show its people, to show its support for those people in Minnesota and all over the country, black, white, yellow, red, brown, you name it.
It was a rainbow.
It was a rainbow. The protesters came from all different ethnic backgrounds, racial backgrounds. They were all marching together for a common cause, and now that cause has really been stepped on.
We have a reporter, Ayanna Crystal, who is at the scene where tear gas was dispersed. The crowds have pretty much been fanned out from that area. Ayanna, give us the latest.
As you can see, you're looking at the flames from afar over there by the hotel, close to the aquarium. People have dispersed from this area, headed over there, but then over to my left, if you can see, there's still a large group of protesters out here on Marietta Street and Centennial Olympic Drive. People are out here, they don't want to go home, they are still frustrated, they are yelling, they are upset, they are just exhausted, guys. They have told me that enough is enough. They want their voices heard. This can't keep on happening. This has happened over and over. This is 2020. This is not what America should stand for. So they're frustrated. It doesn't seem as if they're going anywhere anytime soon. We don't know how long this could last. As we know, this started at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and here we are after 10, and it's still going on. And there are still hundreds of people out here, and they don't want to go home. They want their voices to be heard. They're tired of the injustices, and the police has showed tremendous restraint. We have seen the violence. You can see the fire trucks over there trying to contain that fire. It started out small, and within minutes it increased. Now you're seeing crowds running. We don't know exactly why they're running at this moment. We do know that police have deployed tear gas several times this evening. My photographer and I have experienced that. Let's send it to my colleague, Bobeth Yates, who's in the crowd.
I'm here.
Shit, they running, I'm running too. Fuck it. Get my ass whooped by myself.
All right, so right now you can see a line of police officers are literally lining up right behind me. We can actually see them, and it's really like a confrontation between the police officers and the crowd. The police, though, have been, for the most part, very civil. A couple minutes ago, they had some crews that came by, fire crews that came by
up,
that
OG?
actually had tear gas, and it had
What's
the
wrong?
entire group running. Again,
There's a
there are
fire
also
where?
areas where we're hearing
Yeah, they burning
shots from
something over
BB
there?
guns, and one of the
Fuck, let's
couple
go.
of the people in the area kind of
What the
said
fuck
they
going on?
felt like they were shot by the
Yeah, keep y'all
guns, the
playful
BB
ass
guns.
over
So
here.
right now, though, it seems as if people are protesting simply, and then this line
Shit,
right
folks
here
got
is
her
where
protesting.
it seems to be
Motherfucker
where
already
everything is
bullshit.
coming to a head. Slowly, this line is moving forward, though, because we have seen them take a few
they
steps,
burning
and every
over?
time they take a few
Damn,
steps,
them
we're getting
motherfuckers thick,
closer
too.
and closer away from Centennial Park. Now, if you go right behind me, what we're also noticing
set on
is a
fire?
line of police cars
A
now
couple cop
taking
cars.
over the
Oh,
street.
Shit. Motherfucker setting cop cars on fire.
I think we've lost Bobeth.
Some told me to
And
stop at
so,
Publix and get some
we're
marshmallows.
We're back. I don't know if you can still hear me.
And Bobeth.
So right behind us, we have another line of police officers out here. It actually really is getting chaotic, and to a
No, I ain't
point
got no
where
durable case.
it's a little bit unsafe.
I wish
Now,
I had
protesters are still saying that
'Cause, boy,
they're
it's
just
like about
angry and they really do
100,000
not
people out
care
here. You know,
if the mayor or
you know, in
officers or
Missouri, it's
whomever
like
is
no more
telling
than
them to
3
go
million
home.
people.
They say they're going to continue
Down
to
here,
be
you got
out
like
here.
13
But
million
again,
people and it's
these
still
officers are
growing.
out in force, and the message the mayor said earlier to
Just
me
the
when we
right
were at her
protest
press
to do
conference
whatever
was
you need to
they're
do
no
right
longer
now.
playing. Even though
The
they are
mass can
being
get
civil,
met down
they
here in
are
Atlanta.
definitely going to do
Everybody
everything in
just
their
came
power
together
to
on one
maintain
accord.
order. They said this is not
people
Atlanta.
always
These
outnumber
people are
law
taking it to another level, and this
Especially
is not
down
a
here.
peaceful protest to
If
the
a lot
point
of the
where it's
rappers
no
and
longer
entertainers came
productive.
together
So they said
financially,
they are going
on
to use
economical
whatever
level,
force
they
is
can run it.
necessary to disperse this crowd. And right now you can see from the car, the line of police
a lot of
officers
history
that are
down
on
here.
the street,
When Ku
that
Klux
is
Klan wanted to burn down
possibly
Black
going
Wall
to
Street in
escalate
Tulsa,
this
Oklahoma.
situation.
Bobeth,
Again, let's see
came
if we
to
can get as
Atlanta.
close.
Bobeth, before we
Go
let
ahead,
you
Sean.
before we let you go,
Black wealth
there
down
those two males
And they
to your
breaking
left
in there.
right there.
Fuck is they breaking
Ask
in?
them, T.I. and Killer Mike. I'm sure they know who those
Damn,
two
you just got
individuals
you some
are, the rapper
alcohol,
and
baby?
the local activist. They
know
made a
that.
plea
Damn,
to
what
go
is it?
home. They probably didn't hear it.
The
Can you
bank.
tell them that
Motherfucker
T.I.
broke
said
in the
go
bank.
home and see if they're willing to listen?
What you got?
Okay, let's see.
You gotta use the bathroom?
This
Now, who
gentleman
breaks in the
right
bank
here.
to use the
If
bathroom?
we just
I'll
had,
be
we're at a
damned.
press conference. You had T.I., Killer Mike, and they're saying that you guys need to go
Be careful,
home.
big
Like,
bro.
how would you respond to that?
Motherfucker broke in the bank.
Why would we go home?
Is that a bitch?
Well, they're saying at this point,
Been justice served. I mean, it's only been one cop, you know what I'm saying, that's been arrested, but we need all 4 of them arrested. I feel like.
so is the plan to
Hey,
stay
you
out
see
here and come
$5 in
back
there, bring it
tomorrow
out to 'em.
until
You can go
someone
use the
gets arrested,
bathroom?
more cops get arrested?
Sure, for sure.
Shit.
Why not? Yes, most definitely.
But at this point where it's becoming violent and, you know,
what's
they're
SWAT gonna
setting
do?
cars on fire, breaking into businesses, you
I've
know,
been
do you
locked
think
up
at this point
1,000
it's
times.
crossing that line and it's no longer
Yes,
productive?
sir. I don't give a fuck
I
about
feel
getting
like
locked up.
as
I get
American
out.
people, how else are we supposed to get our point
Shit.
across? I mean,
Think
people
I
are
moved
fed
down
up.
here with some motherfucking
I mean, it's
warrants?
been,
Crazy.
you know, Sandra Bland, Ahmaud, you know what I'm saying, Arbery, and Gregory Floyd.
Shit.
And
Yeah, me
plus,
jammed
like,
up in
many
no
more. I
motherfucking
mean,
Atlanta jail. Damn.
I'm young. I
Motherfucker
mean, you
broke
know,
up
I
in
don't want
the
my
bank.
kids growing up in
Never
this.
seen that
You know,
shit.
like, this is crazy. I never seen Atlanta like this.
What about your safety? Do you feel safe? There's officers here. They've shot a couple of people with BB
Man,
guns.
I seen a couple people shot, but the only thing I can do is just pray. Just pray as a whole. They came out here with riot shields. I mean, they
I mean,
wanted
yeah,
this
you're
shit to
right.
happen,
I
feel
mean,
like.
shit, I ain't
They
trying to
wanted
show
all this
nobody
to happen.
faces. I mean,
Try not
they
to
ran
curse
up in
for
front of the camera, but
I'm emotional right now.
Okay, no worries.
It
Well,
is
thank
what it
you
is
so
out
much,
here.
you guys. And right now, crowd is running again. The crowd is running again. Oh,
shit, anytime a motherfucker break up in the bank to go shit or take a piss, shit, that motherfucker got balls.
okay, all right. So let me.
Clearly, I'm not sure, Bobeth, if you can see.
all right,
I see. It looks like someone just got arrested.
Everybody out here.
Yes, someone did just get arrested.
That's what
That
the
line,
family
the
look
line
like.
is moving. As you can see,
No matter
officers
if it's
have
black,
their guns drawn.
white,
That is a
Bosnia,
BB gun,
Chinese,
though.
straight,
The officers
gay,
have their gun drawn.
tall,
They're
short.
throwing things into the
It's the
crowd right now,
revolution.
and things are literally getting outrageous. Now, what I was just told is the person that did get arrested was acting out of order, and he did something that actually provoked the officers. Now you have the group holding their hands up, saying hands up, just to make sure that the officers know they're not armed and they're not doing anything. But again, this line keeps moving. Let's see if we can go back over there and shoot as much as we can.
All right. Shit. I'm just saying.
So, Barmel, as they're saying hands up, are they trying to press into the line of police officers, or are the police officers being successful in pushing them back further and further and hopefully get this crowd dispersed?
Yeah, it definitely does seem like they are. Each thing happens, they make a couple steps forward. If it's, if it's just a feet or so,
See, this
but
type of shit
for the most part, they are moving forward, and they have completely crossed to the other side of the street right now. But again, these officers have their guns drawn, they have their batons ready, and they are literally prepared for this. So it seems as if they're not as rattled as the rest of us out here.
Well, as we take a look at these pictures, it really is unbelievable how close our cameras are able to get. We have colleagues out there who are risking their own safety to bring us these live pictures. Of course, we have our correspondents in the field. We also have a number of photojournalists as well who are just doing amazing work. You take a look here at those
he came out here with anger issues.
folks
he got
who
me
are
fucked up, though.
right there. The Omni Hotel is one of the scenes where there's been a lot of violence, a lot of vandalism rather, and Haley Mason is there at the Omni, I believe. Haley, is that where you are? Can you tell us what's going on there?
I am at the Omni.
Yeah, I noticed that in
I'm in front of it, but you can see this fire behind me right here in Centennial Olympic Park. There are multiple police cars burning to the ground right
France
now.
got their hand, France make
I mean, it's devastation out here, to be completely honest. I'll give you a look here inside the Omni. It's something like you've never seen before. The glass is broken out of the front of the Omni Hotel. There's a trash can knocked over. If you look down right there, you can see to our right, the College Football Hall of Fame is completely destroyed. And it's just remarkable that as we continue to walk down this way, there is fire burning in the streets of Atlanta in 2020 as a result of this protest gone awry. As a native of Atlanta, it hurts.
Man, they finna fuck him up.
It hurts to see our city like this.
They're playing with these people.
I know it's hard, Haley. You're not
But
alone.
we're trying to stay safe.
You're not by yourself. We saw a very tearful Atlanta native, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, literally almost in tears, speaking not as a politician, not as the mayor, but as a mother, telling, repeating, condemning the actions of these protesters and telling them it's no longer peaceful.
These racist motherfuckers started this shit.
Gregory Floyd. It's over.
So
it's time to go home.
So that's why a majority of the white population that cares and got a heart stand up against this shit. And we didn't start it.
And to see what is happening, these images, and to know that it is going to be repeated over and over, not only just in Atlanta, but across the U.S. and internationally, to reinforce the narrative that these are, as President Trump said, these are thugs.
Well, that is what causes more anger, Sean. Those types of stereotypes, that type of language is in part what people are responding to. So you can't ignore that this hurt is built up over time. Of course, people don't want to see this come to this. People say they want real change. And some people, unfortunately, feel like this is the only way that they can promote and evoke change is through things turning this way. You heard the mayor saying this is not Atlanta, though. This is not the way you do this. These are the streets that Martin Luther King and Ambassador Young and John Lewis and Joseph Lowery marched through for decades to get to a better place. And so that pain that we feel, especially as natives or people who care, it hurts because you feel that we should be better than this. We should be better than this point right now in the city of Atlanta that has made so much progress, but as a country, not enough. And so you see some of that playing out here with this fire that is still burning behind me with SWAT teams. The fire trucks were attacked when they came to try to put out the fire. And of course, these are buildings. And so some protesters would tell us that these are buildings that you can get back, but you can't get back lives. And so some of them feel that this is the only way that they can get their voices heard, unfortunately. And so we're just hoping that things can be safe, but we know that police are ramping up at this point to try to prevent further damage and vandalism and to prevent human injury.
Haley, from where your vantage point is, how many buildings have been destroyed from where you are, and does it look like those crowds have been dispersed away from the ones that have suffered possible looting as well as damage?
Right now, from my vantage point, we can just kind of pan around over for you. You see the Omni Hotel, that's one building. You see the center here, the Georgia World Congress Center, the entrance there is broken out. You can pan over here to the College Football Hall of Fame. That's another building. You see the Starbucks behind me. We're counting 4 now. This is the Embassy Suites Hotel, Ruth's Chris Restaurant. Those cars in front are on fire. This is part of Centennial Olympic Park that is now on fire. You see a number of buildings. We've almost done a 180 pan, and this is just one block. We haven't talked about the CNN block, McCormick and Smix that's torn out. Police barricaded crowds from getting to the State Farm Arena. And so at this point, we just know there's several buildings that have been destroyed, at least on the bottom level. Sean?
Haley, it's just
people looking out the hotel window,
to see what has happened here. There's a person behind you using this as an opportunity, as the mayor says. What message are you sending when you have liquor and you're damaging buildings? What message, how is that helping get justice for Gregory Floyd? The mayor has tearfully said, go home. T.I., the rapper T.I., said, go home. If we lose our city, according to Killer Mike, what else do we have? We have to, in fact, T.I. used the movie Wakanda, which has, it really showed the best of everything African American. And he said, Atlanta is our Wakanda. Don't lose it. This has been a huge black eye for our city. And in the midst of a pandemic where we have an economic crisis, where businesses are struggling to, 1, open, and 2, survive, the question now is, will these companies come back to Centennial Park?
That's so true. And you think about the convention center, the Football Hall of Fame, these sites that have really been shuttered because of the pandemic, the Omni Hotel, and we know how the hospitality industry has been hit so hard by the need for everyone to stay at home and quarantine and isolate themselves. These are businesses, as you mentioned, already suffering, and now to be faced with having to possibly rebuild and put in new windows and everything that's been destroyed tonight. You wonder if they're going to think that it's even worth it. If it's going to be worth the expense to try to get themselves fixed up and back on their feet again.
Or even the narrative that we're seeing here that will unmistakably or will undoubtedly be used against this city. That why have the Republican convention here? What message does this send? We're not ready. Let's go to Ayanna Crystal. Ayanna, you are there in the thick of this. You know, one of the big issues with the governor of Georgia, Brian Kemp, was that he wanted a peaceful protest. He supported the peaceful protest, but he was concerned about protesters wearing masks. We have to realize that there is no social distancing being exercised out there. Do you see a lot of those protesters wearing masks?
I would say it's split. I have seen a lot of people wearing masks, but then again, there are a lot of people not wearing masks. And if you're looking at the crowd, there is absolutely no social distancing going on at this intersection of Marietta Street and Centennial Olympic Drive. More people are headed back this way. For a while, people were dispersed to different areas around the park, but now people are starting to gather again back here at this intersection, and it's pure chaos, Sean. Within every 15 minutes, you're seeing crowds just running, not knowing what they're running from, whether it's tear gas. We've heard someone say they got hit by rubber bullets. You don't know exactly what's going on, which is causing more chaos. It's not safe out here. People need to go home, but they're not going home. People want their voices to be heard, and as we're seeing, this is no longer productive. Things have gotten destructive. They're destroying things here in downtown Atlanta, and that is not what Atlanta is about, like Mayor Keisha Lance Bottom spoke of earlier. People need to go home, but they are not, unfortunately. But if you see over here, the police are blocking off this street. They have had their shields right there. They have showed tremendous restraint. They have not gotten in anybody's face. They have stood here and let the protesters say what they have to say, and they took it. and they're not doing anything, and they're showing tremendous restraint. As you can see, one of the officers is talking to one of the protesters right here, explaining the situation, and they're calm. They're really calm at this point. We haven't seen them get violent with any of the protesters here. But again, more people are starting to circulate back to this intersection. We don't know how long this will last. We have heard protesters yell, "Take your kids home, it's not safe out here." We have seen young kids out here, and it is not safe for people to be out here. We've seen fires. We've seen them destroying buildings. And this is not what people should be doing to get their voice heard. I know and I understand people are frustrated, and protesters have told me all evening they are frustrated. They want their voice to be heard. They are tired. Enough is enough. And we understand that. But once it gets violent, it is no longer productive, and their voice won't be heard when they continue with this violence.
Ayanna, thank you. You know, I think as much as this may be a black eye for the city of Atlanta, I think that a group that will come out of this looking, at least to the general public here in Atlanta and the country, as having done an amazing job is the Atlanta Police Department.
We've seen these exact same images within the last 3 to 4 days. Right now, protests are in New York City. They're in Kentucky. They're in Minnesota. They're in Dallas, Texas. And the restraint that our police force has shown with the citizens here, despite them being unruly, has been remarkable. We saw the Atlanta Police Chief, Erica
Shields.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, I said George Floyd. I want to correct myself. We saw earlier the Atlanta Police Chief, Erica Shields, go and literally walk in the midst of the crowd and talk to some of those angry, frustrated young men, and telling them she understood their pain and that it was part of her reason of taking the job and her commitment to the city of Atlanta to change Atlanta's police department, to be sensitive to the needs and to provide equal justice. Because the question, the issue here is not the question here is not that they don't want injustice to be rectified. They just want it to be equally doled out. We have seen the narrative. One of the high-profile stories here in Georgia now was with the death and murder of Ahmaud Arbery, that it has heightened tensions, and it has tripled into with the death of George Floyd, it has spearheaded these type of protests across the country. What we've seen, it is horrible. But what we saw in Minnesota was far worse. So I applaud Atlanta's police department. They have tried to squash this and has shown immense amount of patience, because once they spray that that tear gas, they will disperse quickly, but once it disperses away, they start to reorganize and come back. And yet the police department is remaining patient and just trying to get them to go home.
I think if those officers in Minneapolis are the worst that law enforcement has to offer, we are seeing the best of what law enforcement can offer right now. Police Chief Erica Shields and her entire department really just doing an amazing job tonight. And when we saw Chief Shields walk into the crowd, and it was a moment I would encourage people to look for it, the video, and we'll have it on the CBS 46 streaming app. When we saw Chief Shields walk in and talk to those protesters calmly, professionally, one-on-one, she looked them in the eyes. She heard their grievances, and she said, "I get it." And then she talked about the need for better training, the need for weeding out bad police officers, the need for getting her officers more engaged in the community. If that is the model here in Atlanta, let that be a template that other police departments around the country try to employ in this day and age.
I think what Chief Shields did is that she gave these young African-American men human dignity. And this is why they have shown up in force, angry, hurt, frustrated. I know there are some of you who are watching this and go, "I don't understand. Why would you burn your own city?" There's no excuse for it. But before you can get to the activity that they're doing, you have to understand why they're doing it.
there has been a miscarriage of justice that has happened repeatedly over and over and over again. Many white Americans, when they get pulled over for a traffic stop, they understand that police are there to protect and serve, and you get your ticket and you move on. But for many African American men, even men in my family, who have been stopped for no reason at all, but simply stopped because of the color of their skin, and to be treated with less than anything of dignity, it creates and it festers. And when you try to get resolution and it never happens, and then you see these huge stories that are repeated in the media with the deaths, high-profile deaths of Sandra Bland, who died in police custody in Texas. And you have the story of Greg Floyd, who died, George Floyd, who died in Minneapolis. And then you have the one here in Georgia with Ahmaud Arbery, and that it took just constant constant anger, and basically it took keyboard warriors on Twitter to get justice. And what I appreciate what the mayor and Killer Mike and T.I. and also the daughter Martin Luther King had said in that press conference is, if you want to make change, go vote. Go vote. That's where the change happens.
Let's go back to Ashley Thompson there on the streets amongst the protesters. Ashley, where are you and what's going on now?
So, Rick, we were at the intersection of Marietta and Centennial Olympic Park Drive, and this is where the hotspot was earlier. This is where everyone was. They have since moved a block over, but we're going to show you what is happening here. The crowd has since been thinned out, so this method that these officers are using, which is essentially a standoff and then asking them to back up, and then another standoff, it appears to be working. As you can see, there are some demonstrators who are still out here face-to-face with these law enforcement officers, screaming in their faces, trying to get their voices heard, chanting, really just trying to talk to them. But it is a standoff. We were talking about this earlier. It's almost as if, who's going to blink first? Who's going to blink first? We're getting asked to move back right now. And we obviously don't think it's going to be the police officer, so we are going to be out here for a long time. But as I said, the crowd has since thinned, since you saw us earlier this evening. A lot of the crowd has gone to the intersection down the road, and that's where we saw those Georgia Tech police cruisers set on fire.
Somebody hit somebody.
Totally smashed. We saw those, the tear gas is flying over there. It's relatively peaceful over here, but we want to show you the aftermath of this protest, this violent protest from earlier. Take a look at Centennial Olympic Park. It almost looks like a scene out of Armageddon. You can see those police cruisers up there. The ones that were set on fire, the ones that people were jumping on, that were smashing the windows, they are all still parked here. Of course, the street is still closed off. It'll probably be blocked off for the remainder of the night because these cars, I mean, some of them have to be towed, like this one right here, this one that was set on fire. We showed that to you live on TV, but the officers have asked us to move. It appears that they may be starting to push the crowds back even more. But at this intersection where we are right now, the method seems to be working. People are leaving, people are going home. They don't want to just stand here. The action has died down over here on this part of Centennial Olympic Park. And as I've said all night, we're going to continue to monitor conditions on the ground. We will send it back over to you guys.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. We're getting some word from Atlanta Police. Sergeant John Chafee, who's with the Public Affairs Unit of the Police Department. It's his job and that unit's job to communicate messages to those of us in the media. And they did provide us with this statement. And I think it's important to note that at least 3 officers have been injured during these confrontations with protesters tonight. The police department says there have been multiple arrests. Some of the protesters have, the officers rather, have been under near constant assault, according to police, including protesters shooting BB guns at them, throwing bricks, bottles, rocks, and knives at them as they continue their efforts to protect property and lives. Again, we have 3 officers who have been injured during these confrontations with the protesters tonight. And really, the police wanted this protest to go off peacefully. And even after there were some earlier skirmishes, Sean, before things got really violent and took such a terrible turn, when there was just some screaming and hollering going on, the police still wanted to allow the protesters to continue.
To me?
They wanted to.
But if I do get tear gassed out here reporting, that's my own responsibility.
They're going to fix racism. We got to deal with
It
this.
really is just amazing.
You know what I'm saying?
Even with all of the leeway that the
careful,
police
man.
have given these protesters, they
No, you
still
can't go through the
have
park. I
not
can't
been
go through the
able
park.
to keep their.
I can't go through the park with this suit on, man.
Themselves from
It's a wrap.
destroying some of them anyway, destroying public property.
I don't know if you know
private
about the
property,
Atlanta downtown
burning
park and
police cars,
and the people that's down
and
there,
injuring
man.
police officers.
Within the
I ain't walking
last
through there with no
10
suit.
minutes, Governor Brian Kemp
Nah, I
just
walk through the
tweeted
park with no
that
suit,
the
bro.
safety of our citizens remain our
Not at
top
night.
priority, and we stand with the mayor of Atlanta and urge everyone to go home.
They can't hit
The
all of
governor
you
goes
guys,
on
man.
to add that state law
Yeah, but
enforcement
shit, tear
officials have been
gas,
working
man.
closely with Mayor Bottoms
You know,
and the Atlanta
that's the
Police
thing.
Department throughout the
'Cause
day.
you might try to get away.
When asked to provide
try to get
support
away and
and
that tear
assistance,
gas get you.
he
You're gonna be
says that the
coughing,
state
you're
of
gonna be
Georgia
disoriented, you
immediately
won't be able to
responded,
breathe,
and he
you
says
won't be
that
able
he
to
will
see.
continue to do so.
And if you
So
are,
clearly,
in
the
fact,
governor
someone they
is
want to
clearly
incarcerate
watching what
and
is
want to
happening here in
arrest,
downtown Atlanta, concerned about the safety of our citizens.
Oh, man, don't be trying to
and
take
just
people
the
off my live.
heart-wrenching press
No, it's
conference
cool.
that the mayor held earlier in tears. She is native Atlantan. She is a mother. She has young boys, and she knows
appreciate all y'all
that
for y'all
the
support.
angst that these individuals,
Thank
these
y'all.
protesters are going through. And she says, regardless, the message has been lost. This is no longer a peaceful protest. Go home.
Yeah, she said this is not in the spirit of Martin Luther King. This is chaos. And she's right. I mean, that's exactly what we have been watching unfold here in our city
so
over the last several hours. It
moving
is
back.
sad
Let's
to
see what's going
watch.
on.
And it's an easy lob to critics who want to use this to say,
walk through the park
why
and
are
see
you
this
burning
bad
your own
news.
city?
Hell yeah, let's
It is,
daytime.
you have thrown them an easy lob. Yasmina Alston, you are in front of the College Hall of Fame, and the damage there is just terrible.
Sean, I've honestly never in my life experienced anything like what we experienced in probably the last 20 minutes or so. Things have definitely calmed down, and now I can really have the opportunity to show you what we're seeing. The Hall of Fame, the front completely destroyed. They've broken out every window here in this front panel area. You can literally look straight inside. Earlier, we did see some people actually jumping through, and you can see they just ran through and ransacked the place. All of this glass here, things were thrown outside of the Hall of Fame as well. Now, maybe 20 minutes ago or so, Atlanta police actually came down towards the Hall of Fame and dispersed everyone from the middle of the street. If we turn around, Steve, here, we can actually see Atlanta police. They're making sure that no one comes into this area. This is that same area where we showed you the cars that were set on fire. I don't know if you can see that over there. You can still see the flames. We are hearing that Atlanta police are working to get everyone out of this area so that they can get those fires out. If you look over here to the left, Steve, we can show, you can still see a crowd of people that's still hanging around this area. There were some people that were trying to actually walk back up towards the police, but the police said, hey, you guys need to go the other way. If you look down this way, you can see stuff all over the ground that came from the Hall of Fame, all these buttons that were thrown out into the road. And all of this happened right before Atlanta police came, and there was tear gas. That's when we spoke to you last, that tear gas was put out, and of course that dispersed the crowds. It burned your eyes, it burned our throats. We all had to sort of take a second after that. So I mean, just an unreal scene out here. I've never seen anything like this in my life. This is really a calm version of what we saw 20 minutes ago.
Yasmina, would you say that they've been successful at clearing the majority of that crowd out of this pocket right here?
Yes, I definitely would say that. I mean, compared to what we saw when we first got here and they were setting the cars on fire over here, there was a large crowd that was actually telling my photographer Steve and I to leave. They didn't want us there. They told us we don't want to be on camera. They were all gathered over there by that Starbucks that we showed you that's also been completely destroyed. But once Atlanta police started walking down this way, came out, a lot of this crowd dispersed.
Has the police told you what, like how long they plan to stay out there in case that crowd tries to reassemble in front of that? And then at what point will they cordon this off so businesses, I'm sure the owners are watching this and are aware of the situation, can come and start to board up and protect what, if anything, they have left inside.
Well, at this point, we don't know how much longer Atlanta police are going to be out here before they get everyone out, but we did hear that that was the plan, to get everyone moving out here soon.
Well,
but again, I mean, just this devastation here, the Hall of Fame, you can see, I mean, just damaged, destroyed, just unreal images coming from down here tonight.
You know, we had the Super Bowl, which really made us the jewel of, you know, the industry, and we had such a great turnout. It was safe, and then to see how things have turned out here, Yasmina, it is heart-wrenching. You've done a fantastic job. I'm glad that you survived that tear gas. I can relate, honey. I was in the Army. I got a whiff of that. It does burn your eyes, doesn't it?
Like I said, it's thousands of people.
Shaw, that was not, it wasn't fun. I can tell you that. Your eyes, the coughing, the masks actually didn't really help, in my opinion. I mean, just nothing like what I've ever experienced.
Well, it was effective at dispersing the crowd, but we have this image. This is directly, I'm trying to think, this is...
That's right by the CNN parking deck. Is in the background of that, and you can see this is just by the front entrance, I believe, of the Omni Hotel as the camera swings back around here. But you just wonder how long the police are going to just let people sort of hang out. You know, I think that probably as long as they're not doing anything, destroying anything, the police are probably just going to let that happen and let people find their own way home and decide when they want to leave.
Atlanta police have shown incredible restraint, and we applaud them. They have respected the life and the dignity of these protesters, even despite the fact that they have been unruly and quite possibly, you know, breaking the law by bursting out windows and looting businesses. They have arrested very few people. That was the goal. Chief Erica Shields said earlier today when she went and spoke in those crowds and spoke to protesters that she said, I don't want to make this a massive arrest event. Yes, an arrest fest, as she
is what she called it, and she didn't want that.
And she has done that. There have not been a lot of people arrested. They have shown, the police department has shown great restraint. We have seen protesters throw bottles. We heard Bobeth Yates say that protesters used BB guns and shot at some of these officers. Hopefully, the very few that have been injured will recover quickly. We know that the police officers have been yelled at, belittled, yet they remained professional and wanted to send the message that what the mayor had said when they first started, we support the right to protest. We understand why you're protesting. Just keep it peaceful.
And this on a day when one of the officers in Minneapolis involved in the death of George Floyd, the main officer whose face we all clearly saw in that original video, Derek Chauvin, was charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter. And then later today, this afternoon, just before we were getting ready to come on the air, there was a new piece of video that was released, a different point of view of the death of George Floyd. And in that new video, you could see very clearly that it wasn't just Officer Chauvin or former Officer Chauvin, but two of his colleagues who were also involved in the pinning down of George Floyd. You saw them all three kneeling on Floyd. Of course, it was Chauvin whose knee was on Floyd's neck, causing him to not be able to breathe and to beg for mercy. And there is that video that I was just referencing, and you can see it's Mr. Floyd on the ground there lying face down, and it's those three other officers keeping him pinned there, along with the fourth officer who clearly is not doing anything to intervene. And that's where a lot of the upset comes. Not because until all four of these officers are charged, Sean, I think we're going to continue seeing these protests.
The protests that we are seeing in Atlanta is not unique. In the last 4 days, and specifically tonight, there are simultaneous protests in New York City, in Dallas, Texas, in Los Angeles, in Denver, Colorado, in Ohio, in Kentucky. There is a grassroots swelling of anger, hurt, and the demand for justice, not only for Mr. Floyd, but for the countless African-American men who have had a miscarriage of justice. The question here is not punishing if you've done something wrong. The question, the issue for many of these frustrated black men that are protesting is that there has not been equal justice. Ayanna Crystal has watched cars burn, trees burn in our beautiful city of Atlanta. The images that we are watching now of police looks like they are pushing their line even further in and
clear the way for that vehicle.
And successfully dispersing a lot of this crowd. How much has it dwindled from where you are, Ayanna?
So I can take y'all to Lennox.
Sean, as you can see, the SWAT trucks are pulling in. Different agencies are rolling in. I've seen Clayton County Bomb Squad.
Okay, so I've got myself
More
boxed in.
people are pulling in here. As you can see, this is the Clayton County Sheriff's Office SWAT.
Oh, fuck. I just stepped in something wet.
They've got two trucks pulling in here.
All right,
we are on Centennial Olympic Drive as they are pushing forward. They did block this street off all day long, and it looks like now they are pulling up to kind of disperse the crowd.
Are not,
we're not sure what exactly they're doing or where they're going, but it looks like they're moving to the intersection where the large crowd is on Marietta Street, forcing protesters to move. Someone's letting off fireworks. As you can see, the crowd is running. And that has happened throughout this evening. People are letting off fireworks. Then the police have been deploying tear gas, forcing chaos in this area, and people don't know what's going on, so they just run, causing more chaos. So again, agencies are pulling into the area to assist the APD office. As you can see right here, they are very calm. They are not getting violent. They are not being aggressive with the protesters. They're standing their ground and talking to the protesters calmly. It has been intense at moments. Again, they're letting off more firecrackers. I talked to a woman earlier. She is asking people to please go home. She doesn't want anyone to get hurt. And that's the fear right now, is that because this is progressive, that people will get hurt or worse, get arrested. I don't know what will escalate in these type of situations. Are high. People have been out here for hours. Frustration is building, and people are not going home. As you can see, the crowd is still at the intersection here on Marietta Street and Centennial Olympic Drive. More people are coming to this intersection to voice their concerns. A lot of people are just standing around. There are people on the garage parking lot just watching, overseeing, seeing exactly what is going on. Excuse me, that was a protester with the inappropriate language. But again, a lot of frustration out here. People don't like what's going on, and unfortunately, this is not the way to go about it. It's not been let's walk proud.
But right now, the tensions are
Ayanna, as you walk into the crowd, Ayanna, as you walk into the crowd, many of them, I'm sure they have not heard the message from Killer Mike and T.I. At the press conference earlier today, they said, go home. Can you speak to some of those protesters out there? Tell them what Killer Mike and T.I. said and see if they're willing to go home.
So earlier today, Killer Mike and T.I. spoke with the mayor.
Hold on.
Why are you here? Go home.
Who wants us to go home?
T.I. and Killer
Mike. Fuck with me.
That inappropriate language. But again, people aren't going home. They're just standing out here. And it's getting intense. There have been several moments where chaos had broke out here. But again, the police have showed immense restraint, letting them protest and speak to them inappropriately with tremendous restraint. Let's send it back to you guys.
Ayanna, before we let you go, there is a common misperception among at least people on Twitter, because I look at that only the people out here protesting are African American. I do see some white individuals. Can you possibly grab some of them and ask them why are they there, and are they willing to listen to the mayor of Atlanta's condemnation of this, and will they go home?
Oh shit! All right, y'all. We up out of this motherfucker. I'm up out of here.
Atlanta. Things would be good.
So right now behind me, tear gas is going on. They got the tear gas going.
That's too bad. We weren't able to hear.
Ayana, we're going to come back to you because if you could get them to hold on and stay with you to ask those questions. You have some technical glitches. We'll try to get that fixed. We have another reporter out in the field.
Brittany Miller has been out in the field all afternoon. Brittany, on the right-hand side of our screen, we're seeing a lot of smoke. Not sure if those are from firecrackers that people are setting off. What are you seeing? Describe it for us.
Those fireworks.
I don't smell any firecrackers. I just heard a loud boom, but something that's happened in the last 10 minutes that has shocked me because there's such a small group of people here, but take a look at the amount of officers that have just pulled up to this intersection. We see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 6 cars and 2 SWAT trucks. They just got out and they're putting their gear on. It looks like they're strategizing right now as to what is going to happen next. I have to tell you, I did get a warning from a captain on APD who said that they would be advancing towards this intersection in a few minutes, and it has happened. Just to give you a reference point as to where I am, this is where those 2 cars were set on fire. They're not, let's walk over here, Lawrence, to see if they're still burning.
Oh, man.
They are still burning. We're hearing loud booms as well. The flames are small compared to how big it was earlier. People are running right now, and we're hearing some glass shatter right now. We don't know where that is coming from. We did have that tear gas earlier, Sean. I know that we were talking about, we would know when it happened, and you were absolutely correct. They threw some tear gas. I'm just trying to watch my back here. They threw some tear gas. The protesters threw it back, and it got into our lungs. It got into our noses. Our faces were burning. Our eyes were watering. Our photojournalists got pretty sick from that tear gas. So it is very powerful, and it does burn, and it stings a lot. So there are, just take a look to my left, Clayton County Sheriff's Office has now pulled up to this scene. So now we have a multi-county approach to dispersing this crowd. So many officers are here, and not a lot of people, actually. The people just ran away. So we have officers just standing on the street here in downtown Atlanta in front of the College Football Hall of Fame. The people, though, have left. Protesters have left. This is the first time I've seen this all day since 3 o'clock. We have 3 people here compared to the thousands that had swarmed and descended upon downtown Atlanta earlier today. So again, it still looks like they're strategizing. I'm looking at Clayton County SWAT truck right here that is pulling up next to the Atlanta Police SWAT truck. So we're going to see what is happening here.
Brittany, before you go, I'm not sure which way the camera angle was, but it looked like there were still some structures that were on fire.
Those were their cars, Sean. I can move you to the left a little bit just so we can get a better look and get closer since the people are gone. These were the 2 vehicles that we saw that caught fire. If we're going to move over here safely, you can see those flames are still there, and this car is charred. I mean, look at the doors busted out, the flames still pushing through the front end of that car. This is one of the fires that were set today, in addition to that police patrol car that we saw. We saw those flames just rising and that smoke billowing into the air. This is still burning, as you can see, but police are trying to just clear out this section, which they have done successfully, I can't say. I haven't seen an empty street all day, and this is the first time I am seeing that. So they have successfully cleared this section of downtown Atlanta on Marietta Street and Park Ave West. So that's the latest here. We do have a lot of officers here.
So I'm as close as I can get.
But we do have some protesters to my left, but they are being peaceful. They're not doing anything. They're just standing here. I don't know if we've shown this to you already, but this is the Starbucks. The windows are blown out there. It has been vandalized. Graffiti everywhere. The sign on the front has just been broken in half.
Brittany,
So
I'm going to
they came
interject
through
real
here.
quickly. Brittany, we asked this question of Ayana. I want to ask if you could possibly do it. There is a common perception that the only people that are protesting are African American. I see in front of that Starbucks there are some individuals that are white. Can you ask them, the mayor of Atlanta have asked them to go home. They probably have not heard that. T.I. as well as Killer Mike. Can you ask them why are they protesting and will they go home?
They're gonna say you was a dumbass and you should have been out there.
You're looking for a white protester?
Right, it was in front of the Starbucks. I saw in front of the Starbucks. I saw them. Can you ask them that question?
Yeah, we can go over there. Sure, they are African American. We're walking this way now. Hold on.
I can't turn it on landscape.
And what was your what was your question, Sean?
Well, I was trying to give some perspective here because there is a common perception that the only people that were out here today, there you see a white male, he's been arrested, unfortunately. But the perception is that there's only black people out here protesting for the justice of Greg Floyd, of George Floyd. And excuse me, I'm getting his name all mixed up.
Let me see if I can ask somebody. Have you guys been down here all day? Did you see the cars? Pardon? Okay. I just wanted to ask, have you seen any protesters here or anyone that was here in this section that was not black? Anyone of any other ethnicity down here? Yes. Talk about what you saw.
I'm not talking about nothing because I look like shit.
Oh. Okay, moving on. Can you guys just tell me what you saw?
It was both races down here. It was both of them down here, white and black. So it wasn't no race thing. It was just basically like they knew what the cops did was wrong.
All right, so you just confirmed it there with people that were here. There were both races here. I did talk to white protesters earlier today. I'm not sure if there were white protesters here later in the day, but that is what I saw earlier, Sean.
All right, Brittany, stand by. We're going to reset as we come up on the top of the hour here as we continue to look at these helicopter shots over downtown Atlanta on this very sad Friday night.
Oh, shit. Tear gas.
And good evening. It is 11 o'clock, and this is CBS 46 News. Sean Gables along with Rick Bolbaum, and we are watching scenes of destruction and sadness unfolding on the streets of Atlanta tonight. Protesters that began very peacefully have turned violent and caused major destruction on the streets of Atlanta.
We do not have any totals of any of the protesters who may have been hurt, but the Atlanta Police Department has released information that at least 3 officers have been injured. There have been multiple arrests of protesters, many of them reported by the police department through bricks, bottles, rocks, even knives at police officers. Some of the Atlanta police officers were shot with BB guns. But again, 3 Atlanta police officers have been injured tonight following a dark black eye on the city of Atlanta tonight. The mayor of Atlanta tearfully pleaded and condemned what started out as a peaceful protest somehow became unruly, out of control, and she told Atlantans to go home.
Of course, all of this is in response to the death of George Floyd in Minnesota on Monday. While in custody of the police, one of those officers charged today with third-degree murder and manslaughter. We do expect the other officers involved to perhaps be charged as early as tomorrow. We talk about the police here in Atlanta and the restraint and professionalism that they have shown tonight. Earlier today, we saw the amazing sight of the police chief here in Atlanta, Erica Shields, walking into the crowd of protesters to talk with them eye to eye, to hear their grievances, and to share with them her thoughts about what can be done to improve things. This, again, is the Atlanta Police Chief, Erica Shields. We want to take a listen to this now. And here she is talking about what happens next. How can police change? Here's what she told us.
The key is training. The key is weeding out bad cops. Especially when you see a pattern of bad behavior. I think it's getting engaged with the community so that you're getting feedback real time about what your people are doing, because you might think you know, but then there's the side of when you're not watching. Body-worn cameras have been tremendous because body-worn cameras show us how a person is behaving when other people aren't around.
We also
So what I see happening on the streets of Atlanta is not Atlanta. This is not a protest. This is not in the spirit of Martin Luther King Jr. This is chaos. A protest has purpose. When Dr. King was assassinated, we didn't do this to our city. So if you love this city that has had a legacy of black mayors and black police chiefs and people who care about this city, where more than 50% of the business owners in Metro Atlanta are minority business owners. If you care about this city, then go home.
And we want to take you back to the scene from earlier in the day. CBS 46 photojournalist was there as protesters lit a police car on fire. This is when things really started taking a violent turn. And watch here as the squad car starts
major
to
for the
catch
city.
on fire
And since
become
then,
fully engulfed. Many people continued to throw stones and water bottles at police. The police then tried to push protesters back in order to get the fire put out. And the result was that 3 officers were eventually injured.
Yep, and we saw this. You see people using whatever they can get their hands on to smash in the windows of these police cruisers. And there you see the vandals going after some of the storefront windows there. That is the entryway to CNN. This is taking place right in front of CNN Center. These people intent on destroying the front of that building for some reason. Brittany Miller has been down among the protesters, marching with them. First, Brittany, when it was a very peaceful protest, and you've continued to speak to them tonight as things have turned violent.
That's right, and you know, we were able to get closer to that car that we were talking about that was burning. This is one of 3 cars that were set on fire today. I could feel the heat from the actual fire. You can see the flames here, but just take a look at the damage to this vehicle. Take a look. I mean, the front end is completely gone. The windows are busted out. This was, as you can see, I can try to see from the top of the car where the blue lights are. This was a police officer vehicle. One of the protesters told me that this was a Georgia Tech car. We are seeing Atlanta Fire Rescue pull up now. They're probably going to try to put out this fire right now. But the protesters, let me tell you, they are gone. It seems as though this protest has ended for the most part. I do not see one protester in sight. All I see are police officers in riot gear and fire rescue. These are the other 2 cars that are in front of the burning car. This one was set on fire as well. Protesters told me this was just a random person's vehicle that happened to be parked next to the officer's car, and this car was vandalized as well. But this is the calmest I've seen it all day. You know, we have been giving you wall-to-wall coverage since 3 o'clock today, and I do not see one protester in sight. It is all police enforcement right now. They are grabbing their gear to extinguish this fire safely. It's one of 3 fires they had to put out today. Of course, earlier, if you remember, the police patrol car was set on fire as people threw rocks, smashing windows, vandalizing the CNN Center as well as the Omni Hotel. So we can hang on this for a minute if you want to watch them extinguish this fire. These are the last flames they'll have to put out tonight, it seems, though, Rick and Sean.
While we watch this video of them trying to douse these flames and get them out, I have to ask you, Brittany, about the air quality out there. You've had a mix of tear gas in the air, and now you've got several cars that caught on fire with the fuel burning and the car itself and metal and plastic. It has to have a hard stench in the air out there.
You can still smell the char from the burning car. I can tell you that I've struggled to breathe all day long, from the tear gas to the burning of the cars. As you mentioned, the air quality, it's been difficult. It's been hard to see. It's been hard to breathe as they put out these flames. Hopefully that will help some. But it's definitely been a struggle for so many people out here. My throat is burning as I'm talking to you, actually.
Give us a scope of tomorrow. Once the sun rises, the crowd is dispersed, and we see the actual scope of all of the damage. What type of cleanup are we talking here, just from your vantage point, from the damage that you've seen?
You know, crews are going to have a pretty big job on their hands once the sun comes up. We have multiple stores that have been just vandalized. I mean, the damage is extensive from corner to corner. All you see is shattered glass, busted windows, and graffiti painted on the sides of the walls. Not to mention the CNN Center. That suffered probably the most damage of any building downtown here. You know, if you remember those images of people spray painting the actual sign that is in front of the CNN Center. So they're going to have a lot of work to do. They're trying to do some of it now by extinguishing this fire and putting some water on those flames. but that is just the beginning, Sean.
Brittany, before we let you go, Governor Kemp about an hour ago had tweeted out that he has sent state law enforcement officials to work closely with Mayor Bottoms and the Atlanta Police Department to provide support and assistance to have this chaos and destruction cleared out. Once those other police agencies from different areas started to show up, is that when you started to see the crowd, at least the remnants of it, truly and finally disperse?
It certainly seems that way. I can tell you when I saw Georgia State Patrol maybe about 2 hours ago, that is when I started to see the crowds disperse. And as you just saw maybe 15 minutes or so ago, I saw Clayton County SWAT team here. I've been told that DeKalb County was also here, but by that time the crowds were gone. But Atlanta Police did a majority of the work. If you remember the image of them standing in that line, what I've been calling a barricade all day long, and really just with their sticks in their hand telling people to move back, move back. They did a majority of the work here with the help of different agencies from across Metro Atlanta, so it is definitely a team effort without a doubt.
Well, they are to be commended as we continue to watch these scenes. Brittany, we'll let you go get some fresh air, and hopefully you're going to be okay with all the fumes that you've had to ingest there. Ashley Thompson, our colleague, also out on the streets tonight of Atlanta amongst the protesters, very close to the violence that we have all watched unfold. Ashley, can you hear us? Why don't you give us a sense of tell us where you are and what's going on there right now?
Sure, we are at Marietta Street, Centennial Olympic Park. I know Brittany just said there were very few protesters where she was, which is really just the next block down, the next intersection. Over here, these protesters are starting to extend the methods and the tactics that these law enforcement officers are using are starting to work. You could actually see through the crowd. There's a commander out here. They're very calculated. He continues to yell, "Hold the line," which means don't let anybody through. And these officers have backed these protesters up a significant amount. Right here, you can see them a little closer. But if you look down this way, just down Marietta Street, I mean, these protesters were really up close and personal not long ago. They have been moved back. I mean, there's got to be hundreds of officers out here all working together. We have state patrols out here. You know, we're east at Clayton County, that's just down the road. We've got Atlanta Police out here. There's a lot of agencies working together to thin this crowd out, and it appears to be working. There are very few protesters here compared to were just 30 minutes ago or so. And I gotta say, while it is calm right now, every maybe 10-15 minutes, something happens and the crowd goes wild. They continue to throw fire towards the officers.
Ashley, your audio is really low, but we can definitely see the images that you are discussing. The police department using multiple tactics to try to eradicate the rest of this crowd that has the remnants that have left over from what originally started out as thousands of people with a peaceful march from Centennial Park, and by the time it reached CNN's headquarters, it became unruly, pockets of violence. We have reports from the Atlanta Police Department that 3 officers were actually injured. We have no totals or numbers on protesters that were hurt, but police officers were threatened with water bottles, shot with BB guns, and now they're in riot gear and collectively in a line together trying to push and convince the remnants of this group to go home. We heard that message time and time again from the mayor of Atlanta. She says this is not reflective of Atlanta at all.
No, it is certainly not. As we take a look at some of these protesters sitting down now, Ayanna Crystal is nearby. The sign there says "Our terrorists wear badges." I don't see how anyone could possibly have any criticism of law enforcement here in Atlanta tonight with the way that they have handled things, the restraint and professionalism that they have shown. We see this woman taking a puff from her inhaler. What are these women doing there? Have you talked to them at all? What have they experienced tonight?
Yeah, they were actually just rinsing their eyes out with water from the tear gas. Again, about 10 minutes ago, they did deploy tear gas in this area. You couldn't see anything, you couldn't breathe. My eyes are still burning. This is my first experience with tear gas. And guys, it is not a fun experience. Your eyes are watering, you can't breathe. It's extremely a burning sensation. So people were over here rinsing her eyes out with water because her eyes were burning so bad from the tear gas. Now again, people are moving still back to that intersection. Rick, like you mentioned, the police have showed tremendous restraint out here. Look at all these police cars out here. They have been out here all day, and they have been truly professional with these protesters, allowing them to let their voice be heard, rally, protest, and showing tremendous restraint, especially when they are all in their face. Again, this started out peaceful, but it escalated once the sun went down, turned violent and destructive. And police, through it all, have not been violent with these protesters, have not been in their face, from my vantage point at least. They have been true professionals handling this with class. It's been a tremendous job with Chief Shields telling these officers to not get violent with these protesters. Again, people are moving back to the intersection here on Centennial Olympic Drive. They are not going home. They are still here. They want their voices to be heard. We have seen fireworks going off. Chaos has erupted several times throughout the night, and when that happens, the tear gas is deployed. As you can see, it looks like something we're hearing crackling that could be fireworks over there. We don't know, we can't see, but as you can see, crowds are running, and that has happened throughout the evening. Every few minutes, something happens and chaos erupts. It is not safe out here. You don't know what's going on, and that's when things can escalate quickly. So again, we will continue to monitor the situation out here. Let's send it back to you guys.
Ayanna, before we let you go, can the two women, the protesters that are on the ground, if they are willing to talk to you, can you ask them, are they willing to go home now? That is what the mayor of Atlanta wants them to do.
Excuse me, ma'am. Why are you out here today?
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry.
We're out here for our brothers and sisters, all our fallen people.
Yeah, man.
We are showing support to everybody who has dealt with police brutality. Latinos and browns and black, white, we here for one reason: police brutality gotta stop today, or there's not gonna be any peace tomorrow.
And again, we've seen all races out here tonight. It is not just black people out here protesting. We have seen all races out here from where we are right next to Centennial Olympic Park. We've seen all people out here, but they aren't going home. I have talked to people about the mayor's message to go home because this is not productive or effective, and they're not getting their voice heard with this violence and destruction. But they want to stay out here. I've heard people pledging to these people, please go home. They don't want anybody to get hurt, because as things continue to escalate, you don't know what can happen in these situations. But they are not leaving, and they are not going home, unfortunately. So we don't know how long this will last tonight.
Well, Ayanna, I heard you say that things are not safe out there. I would like you to please find a place where you could feel at least safe, safer than you do right now, please, as you continue to do your reporting. We appreciate it. Yasmina Alston is out by the College Football Hall of Fame, right on Centennial Olympic Park. This is such a great tourist destination. I know family members of mine who have come to visit here in Atlanta have made sure to stop by this building to see the College Football Hall of Fame. Tonight it looks very, very different, Yasmina.
Yeah, I mean, this entire area looks completely different. Just to kind of give you a recap of what's happened maybe in the last 30 minutes or so, Atlanta Fire, they did come on scene. The Clayton County Sheriff's Office is now here. We're not too far from where Brittany was earlier for her live hit, where those cars were on fire, and they are working to get that fire out. Now, to the Hall of Fame, that's right here behind us. If we walk over this way, you can actually see where all of the windows here at the ticket booth, something was just thrown through those windows, and all of that glass is broken. Graffiti all over. If you look over this way right here, you can see that graffiti that was written onto the wall over here. Right here we see every riot is a rush. You can see where they did that graffiti. Then over here, I mean, just incredible images of where all of the glass was broken out of the Hall of Fame. Like you said, a tourist destination. So many people come here to see and to visit this, and all of that has just been destroyed. I mean, just truly incredible images. That glass is all over the ground here. earlier on, people were actually jumping through some of the windows and just caused destruction inside. You can see knocked over. Everything was just thrown onto the ground. There are clothes hangers that are out here on the ground. And then you can see those bricks that I'm assuming were used to bust all of these windows out. I'm not even sure where those bricks might have come from. Then if you look right in here, you can see everything was just thrown down inside. I mean, it's just an absolute mess here. Really incredible images of what we saw. And now really is the calm after what we saw maybe an hour ago when those crowds were just in the street. I told you earlier when we were standing on the opposite side of the Hall of Fame, there was just a crowd of people that told us they didn't want us to be here. They told us to leave. They told us they didn't want to be on camera. They really were coming after us and telling us to get out of there. And at that time, there was no police presence in this area. That's when Atlanta police, they set up down this way and then moved down Marietta here and got everyone out. So at this point, it's really us and law enforcement and maybe a few bystanders who are just looking at these incredible images that we're seeing out here.
Yasmina, the buildings that had the destruction and the windows broken out of, there were also reports that they were also looted as well. And we're in the midst of a pandemic. Many of these businesses have been closed, struggling to reopen and possibly struggling to stay open because of concerns with the economy. They may not ever come back, and that's a real concern. Did you see looting when you were out there, or did you hear the reports of it as well?
Yeah, Sean, we also heard those reports. By the time we got to this scene, everyone was just sort of in the street, but all of that damage was already done. And like you said, it's going to be really hard for some of these businesses to rebuild from that. I mean, we saw the Starbucks over right across the street, if we can show that. I know Brittany showed that scene earlier as well. That Starbucks was completely destroyed. And then everything here from the Hall of Fame, that's going to take a while to rebuild and to just get all of this mess cleaned up.
Yasmina, thanks very much. We are getting some word, I'm looking at social media right now, that shows that police have set up barricades around Lenox Mall in Buckhead, where they are anticipating perhaps that some of the demonstrators from downtown may head to next to the Buckhead area. And so there is quite a police presence. If you're in Buckhead or nearby, you will see the police there setting up barricades, trying to discourage anyone from coming by. There has, of course, been some violence near Lenox Mall over the last several months, shootings and altercations in the parking lot. So, of course, there will be a police presence there to try to prevent any violence from taking place there tonight. Brittany Miller is out still covering this story for us. And Brittany, just standing amidst the destruction there. I imagine it's too early on for any cleanup crews to begin work, but they're going to have their work cut out for them, aren't they, when they come in tomorrow?
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's not. It is too early, I should say, to start cleaning up. I'm so sorry. I'm so fatigued here because it's been such a long day. But I have to tell you, it will be early for those crews to start cleaning up, but it's not too early to see the damage here. I'm going to step out of the way because I am sharing this experience with you. This is Ruth Chris. This is downtown. This entire window has been shattered. You can see inside, actually. You can see glass all over the floor. There's a wine bottle that was actually knocked off of one of the tables. The table itself has been knocked over. You can see chairs that are flipped over. Again, this is our first look at Ruth Chris. If you can go inside the restaurant without actually going inside, but you can see the lights were shattered. That is how violent this interaction was earlier today. You can see something was smashed into the televisions of the bar here at Ruth Chris. So again, they're going to have a lot of damage to repair and a lot to get through once the sun comes up and once even the store owners get back here. Follow me this way if you can, so I can just walk you through. This is the outdoor patio of Ruth Chris. You can see some of these chairs actually were by that charred car. So they took these chairs, threw them over the banister. And if you walk over here, look at this patio. We are looking at this damage for the first time live. This is my first time seeing it. All of these chairs flipped over. You can see tables have been broken here. I don't want to trip. These tables have been broken here. glass everywhere on chair after chair after table after chair. This entire patio has been destroyed. We actually saw some of these chairs on the street, which means they took them and not only smashed the glass here, but also threw them over the banister. So again, as the sun comes up, we're gonna get to see a lot of this damage. There's so much that happened once the sun went down, but it's just incredible. These images are incredible to see just how extensive this damage was. And if you wanna go back in, Lawrence, look at this, the table, a dinner table, flipped completely on its side there. It looks like a candle. Hopefully that's electric, that's resting on the chair there. But this is unlike anything I've seen before. I know a lot of our journalists have been saying that all day, but I'm at a loss for words. You know, after reporting since 3 p.m., I am at a loss for words, just taking a look at the damage and just knowing how we started off at 3 o'clock at Centennial Olympic Park peacefully and just seeing where things have ended up here.
It is heartbreaking for Atlanta, Brittany, and we heard protesters earlier in interviews that they said that if we don't stop the police brutality, there'll be more riots tomorrow. When you spoke to protesters, and once it stopped being peaceful and turned violent, to those protesters you spoke to after the violence, did they accomplish what they were hoping to accomplish, or what were they trying to do by destroying businesses that provide to the economy and the livelihood to many people who live in Atlanta?
I have to be honest with you, Sean. I spoke to a lot of protesters before the violence. Once the violence broke out, it wasn't safe to talk to any protesters. So if I did talk to them, it was, you know, what happened? Why are we running? I didn't have a chance to have any conversations just because it was such an unsafe situation at that point. So I can't really speak to why they did this or what they were thinking, or even if there's going to be more riots in the future, just because after that violence started in front of the CNN Center, that live coverage, if you remember it, when we saw the CNN Center being vandalized and we saw patrol cars being vandalized and glass windows busted, I didn't have a chance to talk to protesters because we were spending a lot of time running. As you remember, one of our photojournalists even got injured in that. So we were just trying to stay safe at that point. And I didn't have a chance to speak to any protesters at that time.
Brittany, before we let you go, you have seen a lot of damage in that area besides Ruth Chris. Give us a composite of how many buildings you physically saw that are just literally no way they're going to be open for business.
If you know the layout of downtown Atlanta, you have Marietta Street, which really runs through most of downtown, and then you have side streets like Centennial Olympic Park, which was the main intersection. If you go from the CNN Center, I can tell you the CNN Center is vandalized, Omni Hotel is vandalized, McCormick and Schmick, the restaurant, is vandalized, the National College Football Hall of Fame is vandalized, Starbucks on the corner next to it is vandalized, and now here, Ruth Chris is vandalized. And that's just the short distance that I've walked in the past few hours, and that's not that far. So who knows what lies beneath or what lies beyond this, and of course we'll see that tomorrow morning or even in the next few hours when the sun comes up.
All right, Britt, thank you. And the CNN building, of course, CNN Center, also severely damaged. You know, we've heard from leaders who have been encouraging the protesters to go home and to stop it with this nonsense. If you're angry, go register and go vote.
We heard that from Killer Mike. He said that Atlanta is, if we lose our city, what do we have left? He was passionate about his plea. He's from here. He's a native. He said, don't ruin our city. We're losing the message of what you're trying to get across when you destroy your own city. And he really stressed the fact that if you don't go vote, if you don't get involved on the political side of this, really all of this, what you've done, is in vain.
Well, just within the last 5 minutes, President Trump going on Twitter, and his tweet is simple but confusing, I think. It says, time for a change, 2020. You don't normally hear a sitting politician who's running for re-election talk about the need for change, but here is President Trump saying it's time for a change, watching the events unfolding here in Atlanta and around the country tonight, and admitting that perhaps change is what's needed. And so maybe that is the message that these protesters will eventually walk away with, that there is the need for change. And we have a primary election coming up on June the 9th, less than 2 weeks away. We also have a general election, including President of the United States running for re-election this coming November. And so it really will be an opportunity, a peaceful opportunity, for all of these protesters and anybody else in the country who is upset with the way things are right now to go to the ballot box and to register their choice. And that is the kind, that's the democracy that this country was based on, is based on, and that's what I think a lot of the leaders here were hoping, the message that they were hoping would get across to these young men and women who are causing the destruction here tonight.
Well, the governor of Georgia, Governor Brian Kemp, he dedicated resources from the state to assist Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottom, and state police also were here to help disperse this crowd and hopefully get them to go home. That is, as you could see, at 11:28 in the evening, it is still a challenge. There are still protesters on location, but not causing damage at this point. Ashley Thompson, you've been out there. You've spoke to some of the protesters who were very vocal. Once you told them that T.I. and Killer Mike was saying go home, their response to you was, I'm not going.
That's right. And take a look at the billboard right now. If you love Atlanta, please go home. That just up in the last 30 minutes or so, they put that message up. And the tactics and the methods that law enforcement is using over here at Centennial Olympic Park is working. Take a look at where we are, this intersection about a block away from where Brittany is. The crowds have really thinned out. You can see Clayton County, the sheriff's deputies have now made their way over here, and law enforcement has been pushing these crowds back for the last several hours. It is working. I mean, just take a look down Marietta. Earlier, maybe an hour ago, we saw hundreds of people over there. Now, maybe a few dozen we're seeing. It looks like these tactics are truly working. Law enforcement really trying to keep us in this corner over here. They say that some of these demonstrators like cameras, so we are trying to be respectful. But you can see the amount of litter on the ground. I mean, really, this looks like a war zone over here. And of course, we're over here on Centennial Olympic Park Drive where those police cruisers were set on fire. But as you can see, law enforcement is pushing these crowds back, and the crowds are thinning. Now, of course, it is getting closer to midnight. Maybe some people just want to go home. It's getting late. But their tactics do appear to be working, and these crowds are thinning. There are less and less people out here. I know I heard Brittany earlier say the same was true for the next intersection when the Clayton County Sheriff's Office was over there. They are now over here aiding Atlanta police officers and their SWAT department, really just trying to get these people out of here. Sean, Rick.
Ashley, we are watching this situation develop as police are trying to get a hold on what is trying to get the rest of the remnant of this protesting crowd to break up. It looks like there is a little bit of some activity going there between police and the protesters. They want them to go home, but Rick, you had mentioned earlier that there was a warning from Atlanta Police Department that they have set up barricades outside of Lenox Square Mall. Apparently, the fear is that some of these protesters that are being pushed out of downtown Atlanta are now headed to Buckhead. And there are concerns at this hour that Lenox Mall may be the next target.
Well, you know, Lenox Mall, of course, has been the site of some violence over the last several months. And there has been some chatter online that the police are aware of, where some of the people involved in these protests today have suggested on social media that perhaps Lenox Mall and Buckhead area, that is where they want to head to next. And so we know that we've been following the reports that barricades have been set up around the mall, that there is a heavy police presence around the mall right now to try to protect the stores that are there, but there are also reports that there is some looting nearby mall stores, either in the mall or near Lenox Mall, where some protesters have been able to break through the windows and get inside some of the businesses in that area in Buckhead. And so, you know, if this is something that escalates, that sort of moves from one part of town to another part of town, you know, that is going to be sort of taking this to a whole nother level.
We have Chopper 46 headed toward that direction. There are some concerns that there may have been a possible breach at Lenox Mall at this hour. Again, as you mentioned earlier, Rick, there are barricades set up there. The police are aware of the situation, but this violent outburst of what started as a peaceful protest and then was hijacked by several pockets of protesters who have used this to use it as an opportunity to deface, destroy, and loot businesses in Atlanta have now pushed outside of Atlanta and are now going toward Buckhead. We have Chopper 46 en route to Lenox Mall. We'll bring those pictures up to you as soon as possible. But as you can see from the images here, Atlanta police have used great restraint to and have arrested very few people to keep this as peaceful as possible. They just want you to go home. The mayor reinforced that message. She brought in the daughter of Martin Luther King Jr. She advocated and condemned what happened here and said the only way to get your message across about the injustice that African American men are facing in the judicial system and with police is non-violent protest. We did not see this here tonight. It has been shameful for the city of Atlanta, heartbreaking for natives. Our reporter Haley Mason almost broke down in tears on TV because of the pain to see the city that she loves so much share these images that are gut-wrenching. But this is not just happening here in Atlanta.
No, it's not. It's happening in our nation's capital. It's happening in New York City. It's happening in Louisville, Kentucky. And of course, it's happening in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the site of that terrible, terrible killing of George Floyd at the hands of police officers. Derek Chauvin arrested and charged with third-degree murder today. Third-degree murder and manslaughter. A lot of the protesters saying that they will not stop their protests until the other officers involved in that arrest are also charged. Ayanna Crystal has been out near the site of some of the most violent protesting, and we see that that is still going on right now. Ayanna, where are you? What's going on?
We're on Centennial Olympic Drive, where things have intensified in the last few minutes. People started throwing things at the Georgia State Patrol police cars, and those patrol cars left. As you can see, people are trying to destroy this APD car. They're jumping on it, punching it. Things have intensified in the last few minutes. As you can see, people are going crazy over here. Again, this is all escalated in the last few minutes. People coming this way, throwing things at police vehicles, jumping on the cars.
Ayanna, are you able to see, is there an officer inside that vehicle?
No, there's no officer inside of that car. Again, about 5 minutes ago, there were Georgia State Patrol cars here, but then people were throwing things at the car. And as you can see, police are moving this way, pushing people this way.
Ayanna, can you show us the damage that the police car now has? We literally watched violent protesters throw objects to break the window. Are the windows burst out? You can clearly see some of the damage to at least the exterior of the car.
Yeah, as you can see, all 4 windows are busted out, even the back window. People are lighting off firecrackers. They were jumping on that SUV about 5 minutes ago, punching it, kicking it. And then before that, there were Georgia State Patrol cars in front of that car until people started throwing things at those vehicles. So those officers left the scene. As you can see, the other officers are pushing the crowd this way. I don't know if is that tear gas over there? Something's going off in the middle of the street.
Sure looks like it.
Yeah, it looks like it could be tear gas. They just deployed 2 tear gas right here on the street, trying to get the crowd away from here. Things got violent, things escalated very quickly. As you saw from my shot, people were jumping on the cars. The fire truck is coming down the street now. They're still throwing things in the street. You're hearing loud pops. This is getting ugly, guys. This is chaotic. This is not productive. This is not safe. And as you can see, the police are getting fed up.
Ayanna, the concern here is that, it almost looked promising when you see the shots from our other reporters' vantage points, because the crowd had been dispersed and it was really left up to just you know, the owners of those companies come to clear up and start to board up their businesses. But it seems like there are still pockets that once they disperse, they recongregate again, and now they're becoming even more bold and destroying even more property.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Sean. It seems like people are dispersing, but they're coming back to these pocketed areas, and things are escalating. They're not going home. They're moving to different areas and continuing destruction and violence in these areas, jumping on cars. We saw that earlier in different areas of downtown, but now we're right next to Centennial Olympic Park. As you can see, they're throwing things in the middle of the road. That's possibly tear gas in the middle of the street that was just deployed. People are running, it's chaotic. It's dangerous out here, guys. This is not anywhere that people should be right now.
Iana, we're gonna let you get to a safe place. These images, as you try to position yourself away from those protesters that have been pretty violent, if you could still talk us through this, give us an idea of the businesses that are where you are located, and does it appear that they have escaped damage, or do they have damage to their windows and possibly looting too?
Not sure that Ayan is able to hear us right now, but we're going to continue looking at these live pictures. And while we look at these live images from downtown, I want to tell you what the Fulton County Sheriff's Department is tweeting out right now. Fulton County Sheriff Command staff are in the field actively engaged. The SWAT team has been called out, and the entire law enforcement division has been deployed to Lenox Square. 2 Fulton County jail buses in the city are ready to transport anyone who might be taken into custody. And so it does appear as though there are active police operations underway right now in Buckhead. And this is exactly what the police were afraid of, that perhaps some of these protesters may leave downtown after being dispersed by the police and make their way someplace else to do some more damage. Haley Mason is joining us now, and she's been out on the street bravely covering the protests tonight. Haley, set the scene for us. Tell us where you are and what you're looking at.
Rick, good evening. I am in front of the Omni Hotel across from the CNN Center and inside right now of Centennial Olympic Park. Let me walk you through this. Right now, the Clayton County SWAT team is lined up alongside Atlanta police officers. They've spread out since we've been out here, and we've seen the SWAT team gear up, load out, prepared with gas masks and whatever they needed in order to maintain some order out here. I want to give you a look at why they're in this park right now. Take a look across the park. You see the 5 Olympic rings there. Look through Centennial Olympic Park. Crowds are gathering there now. We're going to walk a little bit closer. You can see this plume of smoke coming over the Sky View Ferris wheel downtown Atlanta.
See?
That smoke is now setting fire to the gift shop. This fire is right behind the gift shop in Centennial Olympic Park right now. And when you see these crowds of people right now running away from that fire, this protest has now surrounded Centennial Olympic Park at this moment, as SWAT teams now have gotten tear gas canisters. They have the zip tie handcuffs, and they also have face masks, gas masks, helmets, a lot more tactical gear than we had seen earlier in the day when police were not engaging as much until they absolutely had to. Right now, we know that these protesters are spreading out in smaller groups, but still looks like officers.
And men, how we supposed to conquer the world, and women be our backbone. The world fucked up. You got to understand, starting fires, riots, all that is the voice of the unheard. Buildings and property is worth more than a human to this world. It's crazy how black men can get murdered on live TV, and cops don't even get locked up for it. But you'll bring the National Guards in over some motherfucking concrete. Fuck these buildings. How y'all doing? Oh, y'all good? Oh, y'all doing all right? Good, how are you? Look like y'all got a little lover's lane going on. Dick and a motherfucker. These niggas done burnt down. He put something in that motherfucking truck. Be careful, man. Man, shit, that motherfucker's crazy. So not trying to be funny. I know tonight I'm heard some thugs doing this, but at the end of the day, I don't see none of us over there starting them fires, do you? Them white boys fucking that shit up. I ain't mean to say it like that, but you know, it is what it is. Damn. Look like some good tires in that Jeep. Motherfucker's tripping. Should have just stole the motherfucker. Man, who caught that in fuck, man? Man, this shit crazy. It is what it is. Let me go on this side. Oh, it's nuts.
It's for COVID-19 patients. Thankfully, they have not needed to use the World Congress Center for that purpose. And there's been talk in the last week or so about possibly dismantling that hospital or leaving it up in the event of a second wave in the fall of COVID-19, which some people are concerned about. But you really have to wonder, when you look at these faces and some of the protesters, you can see the anger, you can see the upset, you can see the fear. And we also, to put it into the context of COVID-19, Sean, the African American community, the Latino community has been disproportionately affected by this pandemic. And so there really must be, I can only imagine, a lot of pent-up anger, fear, frustration, sadness, and perhaps all of it just coming to a head tonight.
The tragedy, though, is that if those individuals, because we spoke with some of our reporters in the field, and from their assessment, it was about 50-50 of those individuals who were wearing masks and versus another 50% of the protesters who did not. Social distancing rules were thrown out the door with this unruly protest. And the question now is, not only are you dealing compounded with damage and pain and suffering for these local business owners, but also the damage that the city of Atlanta has to clear up and the cost of that to the city that is already bleeding from loss of revenue. But the concerns now also of the possibility of spreading of COVID-19 among those who were not wearing masks. The other big story that we are following is, yes, the protesters have been dispersed, they've been pushed out of downtown Atlanta, but some have arrived to Lenox Mall in Buckhead. We have new images of some of the businesses that have been targeted, looted, broken into by presumptively some of the looters that left Atlanta and went to Lenox Mall. This is Chopper 46 hovering above Lenox Mall, and this is also some of the outlying stores at Lenox. We've learned that a cell phone store has been looted. All of the product taken out, windows burst down. There have been barricades that have been set up outside of Lenox Mall to stem this situation and possibly get these individuals who are there to leave peacefully. We've heard the message from the Atlanta Mayor, Keisha Lance Bottoms, in tears, tearfully condemning the violent protests that we have seen here in Atlanta. She says this is not reflective of our city, and it is not representing the injustice that you were initially fighting for when this started earlier today around 2:30. It is now 11:48 in the evening, And the police protection of the city has now extended past Atlanta and now into Buckhead, where protesters have started to surround the area, and there have been a breach of several businesses that have been broken into and looted.
And the SWAT team has been deployed. We've learned that as well. Ashley Thompson on the ground for us here as we take a look at those images there. Are we looking at Lenox Mall? Is that what
this
that
is?
Is
Lenox
right
Mall,
there?
yes.
Okay, so this is the parking lot at Lenox, and you can see the police presence there, and the barricades that have been set up to try to protect some of the businesses at the mall, which could come. Could be in danger if some of these protesters bring their tactics up to the Buckhead area. Ashley Thompson live for us on the ground there. Ashley, where are you? And it looks like it's quieting down a little bit where you are.
Yeah, that's right. We are still over here close to Centennial Olympic Park. Want to give you a look at what's going on right now. There's some SWAT officers, and it looks like they're getting ready for something. They may be heading into the park where Ayanna and Haley were. We understand there is a fire over there, a lot of action going on over there. Where we are right now at Centennial Olympic Park in Marietta, not much happening at this point because officers have really rid the crowd. They've gotten rid of the crowd. As you'll remember hours ago, this was the hot spot. This was the popular spot where everybody was. All of the officers, all of the demonstrators. But take a look at things now. I mean, incredible. You can actually see through this intersection, and you can actually see a little bit of what has been left behind. Now, take a look up at this billboard up here. I would say maybe the last 45 minutes. This has been up there. If you love Atlanta, please go home. We know we heard those emotional remarks from the mayor and several local celebrities earlier, urging demonstrators to please go home. But there are still many out here, and the aftermath of this demonstration is just really astounding. Take a look at this woman right here trying to clean up. There's going to be a lot of that tomorrow when the sun comes up. We can really get a full scope of what has been left behind. But over here at this intersection, it truly looks like a war zone. It really looks like something out of a Marvel movie with these cars set on fire and the buildings just the windows blown out of the buildings smashed through. But police have made incredible strides over here, trying to get rid of the crowd, trying to get rid of the demonstrators. For the first time all night, really, I could actually, just walk freely in the middle of this intersection. We know Clayton County, the sheriff's office is over here helping, and demonstrators, as you guys have been reporting, there are concerns that they're moving to different areas, Lenox Square, maybe the middle of the park. But from where I am, the protesters have since left. I mean, really, everything that's left over here is law enforcement. And there have been dozens of arrests over here in the last few hours. And they're all right now on that bus over there. They're all being held on the bus, all of those who have been arrested. So it is fairly peaceful right now in this area. It looks like they've got it under control. They wanted to gain control in this area, and they certainly have. We don't know if that's going to be the same for other areas tonight. Back to you guys.
Ashley, real quickly, I know there's a billboard that's up there that's saying that if you love Atlanta, please go home. That went up just shortly within the last 30 minutes.
Sure, yeah, that billboard right there. If you love Atlanta, please stay home. Those remarks from our mayor, right? We heard from our mayor earlier tonight. She was incredibly emotional. We heard from Killer Mike. We heard from T.I. They're asking Atlanta not to trash their home. And that is certainly what has happened here tonight. So yes, they have put this billboard up here. If you love Atlanta, please go home. They don't want this city to be trashed, as we've seen all night. And like we've been saying throughout the newscast, because it is a shame that, some of the demonstrators who've gotten a little more wild have overwrapped the peaceful ones, but there have been more peaceful protesters here than ones who have started trouble, and we definitely want to reiterate that. Back to you.
Ashley, we appreciate your reporting out there. You've done an incredible job despite, risking your own safety. We're glad you're okay. This seems to appear to have no end in sight yet.
No.
The governor has stepped in of Georgia to help the mayor, has sent in resources. The state of Georgia has sent in, state police have come in to assist. They have been successful at dispersing the majority of the crowd, but once they're dispersed, they re-congregate in a different pocket And as we've seen in some of the earlier images, they have become more brazen, more bold, and have begun to destroy even more property.
Ayanna Crystal is standing by. And Ayanna, when we last talked to you, there was some movement. The police were trying to push some of the protesters in a certain direction. You're right near that Waffle House, and I believe near the Ferris wheel as well. Talk to us about where you are and what you're seeing.
Yeah, Rick, they have dispersed the crowd and now they are surrounding the Waffle House. But first, take a look at this sign. This is what this is all about. This protest and rally is because Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, and every single other one. That's a very poignant sign in the middle of all of this chaos. Take a look at the Waffle House. People are surrounding the Waffle House. Everybody's calm, but again, the crowd has dispersed to this area of the park. The police officers have been moving people this way. They're in full SWAT gear, their riot gear, they have their shields, their sticks. They, again, have not done anything, but they are forcing the crowd to move this way. Something that is concerning as they are letting cars come down this street. Now again, these protesters haven't done anything to these cars, but it's not safe for these cars to be driving in the middle of all of these protesters right now. As you can see, people are starting to chant. They're chanting no.
Haley, and we also saw inside the World Congress Center those law enforcement sort of walking around surveying the damage perhaps, and we have to really remind viewers that it was just within the last couple of weeks that building was turned into a makeshift.
So we're, as you can see, me and my friend, we're two parking lots away from what we're looking at right now. The Wells Fargo is up in flames, at least where the tellers go. How far would you say we're from? You type in the 3rd precinct if you can. Are you live streaming? When you have a chance, I'll have my friend pull up. We can get exact distances instead of me just sitting here estimating. Sheesh. Sheesh is right. So like I'm just gonna kind of show me and my friend we are a safe distance. This is about the distance will remain for the night that we stayed. I stayed as far as I could last night. You guys can hear downtown. You hear it? It sounds like a fucking war zone down here, bro.
It's about 2 miles away.
About 2 miles away, he says, is the 3rd precinct. So on the other side, okay, so we're gonna look and see. So this is the map you guys can see. This is where we are, the blue, and the 3rd precinct is the red. The 5th precinct, like I said, is on the opposite side of this Wells Fargo that is currently on fire.
And we'd have to get over 35 to go back.
And so this is so the people are behind us. They're starting. They're gonna march this whole. They're gonna march this whole thing between the 5th precinct and the 3rd precinct all night long. For what it seems, dude, even just standing is better than walking for right now. A good spot. You don't want.
Hey guys, well, I can't watch this anymore. There's so much footage out there of all this stuff going on, and you can find it yourself. I just wanted to make a live stream and document at least what I was watching. Something actually happened that was, you know, horrible. I would have had it on record. I mean, this stuff is not great to watch at all. It's horrible in its own right. It's not a great time in America, to be honest. There's all this crap. This is, where is this? This is Oakland. I've been watching all these on like, I have four monitors on my computer, and I've been watching all of these just in and out. But you want to watch yourself, okay, here's random Facebook. We'll start at Facebook. This is your normal page. See, and somebody else is sharing stuff on my timeline. That's me. But here's how you get to what I was showing all of you all night. Go over here to watch. There's all these videos. There's this guy.
Got a red fucking bandana? Hey. No, we ain't no fucking thugs. We here for one fucking reason. George fucking Floyd. That shit.
Yeah, there's him. So then you want to click live. There's that guy. Just type in protest. Protest and then hit search. So many windows open right now. Downtown Detroit, Charlotte, Seattle, Dallas, Chicago. These ones are old. You want to see the ones that are live. That's Fox 2 Detroit. So you know it's who it is, you know, basically. I like to watch the ones. All-Star Magazine. See, that's like a little thing. See if there's just like person. There's so many of these. James Webb. This is like a 4-screen thing. I was watching that earlier. Sacramento. These are the ones I like to watch. I don't like to watch it, but it's what you get the most out of.
That's why I put it on. I did too. That's why I put it on my hand and smelled it.
These are people walking around and
I've already
actually
poured it on the hand, given a
recording.
smell test.
But that's how you can see all the coverage that I've been showing you guys is in Facebook Live. You go to watch, you go to live, and then you type in protest. But I've had enough of watching this for tonight. Making me sick. Hope everybody's safe. Honestly, that's it. But I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna end the live stream. So everybody stay safe. All you people all night. Everything. I want you guys to remember one thing. We can go back to normal. It always does. You have to forgive, but not forget. Alright, God bless you guys. I'm gonna get out of here. I'm gonna go play some PUBG with my friends and try to forget all this shit. So, you all have a great